slashing another enemy in half. The blonde-haired girl landed near the core of the dungeon. At first, Nana thought that all enemies had been defeated. But suddenly, 2 more huge hornets materialized from the body of the shattered monster, not inferior in strength to the original. One of the opponents immediately went for a swift attack, while the other hurriedly flew into the girl's blind spot. In the next instant, a hornet scrambled across her back. Not even a couple seconds later, Nana became completely exhausted and helplessly fell dead to the ground. The last person she remembered bleeding was her older brother. Tonight, she had promised him to be back in time for dinner. "I don't think I can keep that promise," the girl whispered quietly before she died. Meanwhile, somewhere in the town of Meiku, after shopping for groceries, Ro was on his way home. On the way out, he heard someone call out to him. Waving to the guy, the man with the shovel in his hand remarked that he had quite a lot of groceries with him today. Was his sister really coming back today? Turning around, Ro confirmed it, adding that Nana had promised him to return once the expedition to the rank A dungeon was over. This man is a D-rank researcher, Koji Shimura. The boy asked him how he was doing, to which he replied that he was almost fully recovered. After promising the guy he'd stop by again sometime, Koji said his goodbyes. When Ro left, one of the disgruntled cronies standing next to Koji asked why they, risking their lives, couldn't even afford meat while this loser feasted like a king. His buddy in turn explained that the guy has a sister who is a member of 7 Stars, the best organization in Yoram. Koji Shimura asked his partners not to be stupid, reminding them that it was Ro who saved Nana from starvation by pulling her out of the slums. Ro has survived since childhood by picking up trash and eating scraps. And while that's quite commendable, one of the buddies did point out that this dude eventually became just a freeloader living off his sister. If she dies, he'll have to go back to poverty. After a while, Ro returned home, placing the grocery bags on the table. The boy looked at his watch and noticed that he was far behind schedule. He travels far from here for fresh ingredients, which made him a little late today. Deciding to hurry up, he set about preparing dinner. After preparing a bunch of delicious dishes, he set the table and began to evaluate the work done with satisfaction. Ro looked at his watch again and noticed that his sister was running late for some reason. Did they leave her on overtime again? And now 3 hours had passed. It was getting dark outside, but Ro continued to wait for his sister at the dining room table next to the cold food. Suddenly, there was a phone call from an unknown number. When the guy picked up the phone, an unfamiliar voice introduced itself as a representative of the Explorers Association. Making sure they got through to a member of the Nana family, also known as the Shining Light of the 7 Stars, a voice from the association reported that she had been killed in the S-rank dungeon. Her death was confirmed 2 hours ago. A spokesperson for the association also asked Ro to keep this information confidential, because the death of a member of the 7 Stars could cause serious problems. Before saying goodbye, an unfamiliar voice asked the guy to contact the Researchers Association within a month for compensation and benefits. Hearing this, Ro dropped the phone to the floor and looked up devastated. He couldn't believe his little sister was dead. Memories of her began to flash before his eyes, of how she had asked permission to call him Big Brother, of Nana once again kicking the bullies' asses and asking him if he was okay, and how she promised to come back soon. That day, hugging Ro, his little sister asked him not to worry and to prepare something delicious for her arrival. According to her, this expedition shouldn't have been dangerous since she was sent to the A-rank dungeon. That's when Ro noticed the inconsistency in the words of his sister and the man from the association. Nana said she would go to the A-rank dungeon, but that voice reported S-rank. The association uses a special program to investigate the cause if something happens in a S-rank or higher dungeon, especially when it comes to 7 Stars. But this time, they ignored the program and contacted the family directly right after the incident. They couldn't find out in just 2 hours exactly what had happened in the S-rank dungeon. Or maybe there's something else behind it. 5 days later, the main building of the Explorers Association. Sitting at his desk, the head of the Meiku branch, Rakuto Hotu, asked Mr. Ro what brought him here today. If it's about the Shining Light, they've already talked about it on the phone. I want to register as a researcher, Ro explained. Such words briefly put the head of the department in a stupor. Realizing what this boy had just said, Rakuto Hotu sighed heavily. The man immediately explained to him that to become a researcher is to walk side by side with death. Besides, Ro has no skills. He is underqualified. He'd been the closest thing to shining a light while she'd been alive. Obviously, she would want her brother to live in peace. However, according to the rules of the Researchers Association, a relative of a researcher can become one regardless of ability. Ro was aware of this rule, which he immediately reminded the head of Miku's department. Realizing that he couldn't do anything against him, Rakuto Hotu had to agree. Before the boy left, the head of the department asked him to stop by here if anything happened, or if he had any questions. At last, Ro turned around and looked coldly at the man. The very next second, the office doors closed. You could tell by the look on the department head's face that he wasn't sure this decision would lead to anything good. At the front desk, Ro was given his ID card. Ro, 21 years old, initial rank is E. In fact, the conversation between this guy and the head of Meiku's department was a little longer. Rakuto Hotu narrated that the person who was on the team with the shining light used a special item to escape. As soon as he got out, Yoram began to prepare a rescue team. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to save her in time. Furthermore, as it turned out, from the information reported to the department head, Nana had indeed been sent to the sealed S-rank dungeon. Hotu assumed that the girl had simply lied to her brother about going to the A-rank dungeon so that he wouldn't worry about her. However, Ro will never in his life believe that Nana herself chose to become a noble victim. Are you saying that she willingly agreed to a task that was impossible for her, and yet allowed her partner to bail at the most crucial moment, leaving herself to fend for herself? This is some bullshit. Ro will get to the truth no matter what. Sometime later, outside of the D-rank dungeon, the heavily armed researchers were already preparing to go inside. Meanwhile, the reserve researchers in blue jumpsuits were discussing whether it was cool to be on the front lines. Some find it fun, while others are content with their current role because they are afraid to fight monsters. 30 years had passed since the dungeons first appeared. Most don't get used to the sight of monsters, even with decades of experience as an explorer. Bottom line, they sit in the rear guard all their lives. Their task is to wait for the frontline explorers to destroy the dungeon guardian. It's the same on this expedition. This time, 2 experienced explorers and 1 newcomer were put in the rear guard. Oh, right. There was another guy besides them that they were seeing for the first time. When the blonde-haired big man asked the boy if he was a newcomer, Ro gave him a cold look and confirmed it. Then the man with glasses advised him to stick with them since it was his first time. Today, newcomers should not have much work to do, so all they have to do is watch their elders and learn from them. Before he could finish this sentence, someone's screams suddenly came from the depths of the dungeon. Human screams mingled with the roar of unknown creatures. The frightened rookie asked his elders if they should go help. The blonde man in turn yelled that this kid talks like he hasn't been through freshman training. If they went there, they would simply be eaten. The rookie then narrated that something happened in the association this year that caused the practice not to happen. Such information was clearly not to the liking of the senior researchers. Ro hadn't had any training either, but he thought it was because he had entered the association in an unusual way. It turns out that there was indeed a problem in the organization. Researchers are usually understood to be combat specialists. However, only D rank and above are eligible to participate in combat. Support researchers consist of civilians and rank E researchers. Essentially, rank E are mostly part-time employees. As the elders explained all of this to the newcomers, voices resounded from the depths of the dungeon once again. The explorers from the front ordered the rearguard to approach them sooner rather than later. After walking to the last room of the dungeon, Ro and the others saw the defeated guardian. However, next to the dead monster, they saw their expedition mates mourning the mangled co-commanders. Well, I'll probably censor this one. The author of this manga is too good at drawing, so he showed in good detail how one of the researchers was disemboweled. One of the newcomers could not bear the sight and immediately vomited. This fact pissed off the squad tank. He was about to cripple the asshole, but his partner immediately stopped him. She explained to him that this boy was new and shouldn't be mad at him. Turning to the guys who have experience, she asked them to keep their cool. When the frontline researchers left, the blonde big man slapped the newcomer with anger and ordered him to get to work. After starting to mine the ore, the newcomer asked why they yelled at him, even though he hadn't done anything wrong. Ro in turn explained that it was disrespectful to the dead and their loved ones. These people turned out to be sensible, and so he was lucky he wasn't penalized for it. The newcomer was surprised that this guy knew so much, and so he wondered how he learned it. Picking up the crate of ore, Ro sadly muttered that he had heard it from someone. One day, while he was cooking dinner, his sister told him that a pledge had died that day. It was just practice, but the rookie overestimated himself and got ambushed. Another rookie assistant saw this and threw up. The dead man's friend got angry and killed that newcomer. Nana tried to stop him, but it was too late. Of course, killing someone over something like this is a bit much, but combatants have always been highly supportive. Looking at the huge body of the dead monster, Ro asked the elders if this thing needed a cleanup. The blonde was now convinced that this dude was indeed a rookie. Previously, he was very calm, and so the bulky man began to think that he was pretending. To clear a dungeon, you need to smash its core. But to destroy the core, you must first destroy the guardian. No matter what kind of monster it was, its body only lasts for 30 minutes after death, but for guards, the cooldown starts after the core is destroyed. Monster corpses are worthless. They simply cannot be taken out of the dungeon. But when you defeat a guardian, chances are you'll get a weapon or gear. Sometimes rare items even fall out. Anyway, since the dungeon closes 30 minutes after the core is destroyed, it's time to get the hell out of here. When they left the gate, the elders allowed the newcomers to disperse, saying they would deliver the loot themselves. The salary will be transferred to them within 3 days. Lastly, the man with glasses reminded them that just because support doesn't fight, it doesn't mean it's safe. If they want to last longer, they need to at least practice. The elders left, and Ro continued to stare after them for a while. Clenching his fist, he promised himself to get stronger. 2 days later, he met with the head of Meiku's department again. Rakuto Hotu asked for an opinion on the dungeon, to which the boy replied that it was strange and dangerous. Besides, he didn't find anything there worth risking his life for. Such a phrase triggered déjà vu in the head of the department. As he opened the door, he noticed that Ro and his sister did look alike. They went inside the building and found themselves in a large training room. "Ro, I find this so strange." Rakuto Hotu suddenly spoke out. The man had made the point that with Shining Light's heritage, the boy could always live in comfort. So, what is his purpose? Ro then responded that he can't just relax, live on Nana's legacy. Plus, he's sure that word has gotten out to a lot of people that he's trash, mooching off his sister. He's sick of living while people whisper behind his back. Shining Light's death will only be kept a secret for a while, but eventually it will be noticed that it is Ro who is the sole heir. Rakuto Hotu is pleased with the fact that the boy has decided to become stronger on his own. That's why he decided to introduce him to this man here. His name is Charlie List. He's 37 years old, and a member of the Meiku Township Explorers Association. From this day forward, he's going to be Ro's mentor. Yeah, he may look rough, but he's the strongest in Meiku's department. Looking at his new apprentice, Charlie asked Rakuto if he really wanted to make him babysit the brat. To dispel all his doubts, the department head told him that this kid was Shining Light's brother. Reluctantly, but Thug still agreed. Ordering the kid to follow him, Charlie asked Rakuto to get the hell out of here and not get on his nerves. Soon the two were left alone together. Charlie immediately guessed that the boy had used the privilege of being the heir to an elite explorer to get here. The man asked if he was sure he hadn't been scammed. Does he have any idea what that privilege means? Explorers are ranked in 6 levels from S to E, but those who exceed even the S ranking are called 7 stars. Elite researchers receive top-level privileges, and even after death, their families partially inherit them, but only if the researchers designate an heir during their lifetime. It is common to write about inheritance in a will, but one part is the rarest and considered the most useless. It is about the right to become stronger and to join an association without hindrance. If everything explained to the boy made sense, Charlie suggested he make his choice now. "Choose what?" Ro clarified, putting the coach in an awkward situation. Scratching the back of his head, Charlie told the kid that there were 3 types of training: offense, defense, and speed. And since he could hardly present it to him in words only, the man decided to show it in practice. After blowing apart a practice target with his foot, he gave an example of an offensive drill. For pre-show defense training, he had 2 mech assistants beat him up. Speed training, on the other hand, is about dodging enemy attacks. After showing the student all of this, Charlie suggested that he choose his own style. Looking around at the wreckage beneath the man's feet, Ro was very quick to give an answer. "Defense," he said confidently. The very next day, Ro's training began. Cardio is a very important part of any workout. However, the boy ran for so long that very soon he felt bad. Is there any point in pushing yourself to the point where you want to vomit? Now he was beginning to wonder if he'd made the right choice. When Ro voiced his choice, the coach praised him and commented that he was pretty smart. Charlie's peers often chose either offense to protect themselves or speed to have more time to attack or run. That's why they're all dead by now. This proves that the choices Ro made will help him live as long as possible on the battlefield. Now the guy will have to make his own training regimen. Now Charlie wouldn't think of personally coaching this kid. What's the point of exercising him anyway if he's out of breath after a short jog? To strengthen his body enough to start formal training, Charlie gave the apprentice 2 months. If he doesn't reach the minimum level by that time, the thug will immediately give up on him. And it won't bother him that this dude is Shining Light's big brother. After pondering his coach's words, Ro decided to run some more. Day after day passed and he continued to persevere in building his body. In addition to physical training, he also studied information about the existing monsters and dangers in the dungeons. One day he got his hands on a report about the Dogumbi monster. It is an S-rank mystic beast that possesses the elements of air and water and has extremely high physical defense. The boy had no idea that mystical beasts could be so powerful. No wonder Nana was so stubborn and wouldn't let her brother become an explorer. In addition to working out, Ro also consumed a fair amount of meat to gain muscle mass. His less successful colleagues noticed it. Moreover, rumors reached them that this kid went every day to the rest station, a place for rich people to get treatment for injuries and even recover from overwork. He doesn't even have any powers yet he lives a good life. How is that possible? Every day the boy would go to the park and have a stair run. In the same park, he exercised on exercise machines. And now it's been 1 month since he started his training. Ro has achieved impressive results in such a short period of time. That same day, Mr. Koji Shimura dropped by for a visit. The boy let the guest inside. While he was pouring him tea, Koji said with a laugh that he didn't even recognize Ro at first. He seemed to be practicing quite a bit lately. After saying that, the man suddenly fell silent and looked sadly at the guy. "Hey Ro, when's Nana coming back?" he inquired. In response, the boy said he had no idea. According to people from the association, she is on a business trip abroad and will not return soon. But noticing Koji's concern, Ro reminded him that they had known each other for a long time. If he was worried about something, he could feel free to ask. Then the man told the guy that the way he has been buying more and more things lately has been attracting attention. As you know, in these times there are a lot of people who can't even afford a piece of bread. In addition, rumors went around that he goes to the rest station every day. Ro immediately guessed that Koji was worried he might get mugged or something. Indeed, the man wouldn't be worried if Nana was by his brother's side. However, he had heard that something bad had happened to one of the 7 stars. Wary, Ro asked his buddy where he heard it from. As it turns out, Koji accidentally overheard a conversation between several A-rank researchers. The association seems to want to keep things quiet, but there are people trying to find out what happened. "Tell me honestly, how is Nana doing?" Koji Shimura asked again. But Ro only smiled and explained that if something happened to his little sister, he simply couldn't live like that. After he said that, the two sat in silence for a while longer. Finally agreeing with him, Koji remembered that they had indeed always cared more about each other than themselves. Apologizing for such a strange question, the man said he had a couple more things to do and promised to visit his buddy again sometime. He said goodbye and, leaving the apartment, closed the door behind him. Ro immediately pulled out his phone and called one of the contacts signed as Idiot Number 3. "You finally decided to call me?" came a voice from the other side. Recalling that he'd tried to call him 45 times in the last 2 months, the voice wondered why Ro had called him himself so suddenly. Was it because of the 7 stars? "Why didn't you just ask for an association?" "Well, depending on your attitude," were the last words Idiot Number 3 said before Ro hung up on him. When the guy called the interlocutor again, the latter had become more cooperative. But just to be sure, he threatened to call his older sister if the dude kept talking nonsense. Idiot Number 3 had been trying all this time to figure out what happened to the 7 stars. He found out that one of them had died, but couldn't determine who exactly. The association is desperately trying to cover it up, but that was to be expected, since even an injury to one of the 7 stars would draw the attention of the whole country. And since Ro is asking the intermediary about it instead of his sister, Idiot Number 3 now has reason to believe that something happened to Nana. "I'll go contact your sister," Ro said coldly, tired of dealing with this idiot. The call was immediately cut off, prompting Idiot Number 3 to throw his phone on the floor and shout that he had acted too hastily when he decided to introduce that bastard to his older sister. This conversation once again made it certain that someone was trying to investigate Nana's death. Is it a power struggle? Or are they connected to Nana's death? Here it is, 2 months since I started practicing. Entering the hall, Charlie saw his student and smiled. He had changed so much in such a short time that he was now hardly recognizable. Fortunately, though barely, it still passes the parameters for the start of the real trial. Charlie had 2 pieces of news for the boy. Good news and bad news. The good news is that he can only take one kind of training at the moment. But here's the bad news he's obviously not going to like. After all of his training will consist of getting beaten up. After explaining this, Charlie hit the student with such force that he flew back against the opposite wall. Approaching him, the man advised the boy to memorize this power. Once he could resist it, his training would be over. The purpose of this training is to build resilience. If Ro does not die, no matter how hard he is hit, he will live a long life. Inside the dungeons and outside the dungeons, the same things happen. Those who survive are the strongest. You can't be called strong if you die. For starters, Charlie gave his student the opportunity to spar with an artificial intelligence. He was allowed to dodge attacks, but attacking the guy himself was forbidden. Throughout the battle, all Ro did was run away. Then he wondered if there was any point in continuing to do so. If he just dodges, it would defeat the purpose of training. While he was thinking about it, the enemy had already gotten close. Remembering his coach's admonition, the boy decided to stop dodging. Crossing arms in front of him, he took the impact of the machine completely upon himself. Without moving from his seat, he continued to block the blows one by one. Watching this, Charlie was once again convinced that his student was quite smart. With such power, he would be able to train both his speed through evasions and his physical body through blocks. Defense training is often thought to be useless. But at the end of the day, everyone understands that defense is not just about physical strength. Charlie, who was about to get some sleep, was interrupted by a sudden phone call. All last week, he'd only gotten 3 hours of sleep each night, so if he was forced to run any more errands, he'd go to the association and trash the whole office. As soon as Charlie put the phone to his ear, however, his angry expression changed to a serious one. In Mizuyasu village, an S-rank dungeon had appeared in the S-rank dungeon. It had already consumed most of the village. Sitting in his office, Rakuto Hotu heard a knock on the door. Once inside, Charlie List told them that Kazami of the 7 Stars had given them the go-ahead. Sure, it would be easier if Shining Light was with them, but Charlie has pretty good powers of persuasion too. Taking a seat on the couch, the thug-savvy one realized that they had no choice but to deal with this problem as soon as possible. They haven't been able to close that gate for over 2 weeks now. Team Kazami went to the dungeon, but in the end they only came back crippled. Now the next sortie is scheduled for 45 days from now. Charlie would be only too happy to try to close the gate on his own, but he can't replace the 7 Stars member, and so now has to wait for his recovery. Also, it looks like there's been an internal rift in the Kazami family. The youngsters have disappeared, so Kazami himself seems to have to search for them soon. 45 days later, a D-rank gate recently opened away from the city. The group of explorers had already crossed the entrance and were heading into the depths of the dungeon. For Ro, it turned out to be his first trip into the dungeon as a warrior explorer. Everyone walked on without saying a word until some bang-headed guy excitedly alerted them that the boss was in the neighborhood. And he was right. The territorial 6-star boss, looking like an infernal rabbit with a horn on his forehead, was waiting for them in his domain. Once they saw him, almost all of the Seekers rushed into battle. Each of them was trying to do as much damage as they could. It looked like they were competing. It was obvious that for such experienced explorers, this battle would not be too difficult. However, why did they rush into battle so confidently, leaving only 3 less experienced teammates behind? Besides, the ease with which they dealt with the boss couldn't help but arouse suspicion. They move as if their rank was at least C or even B level. In that case, why would such people go to such a low-level dungeon? The battle quickly ended with the axe-wielding explorer chopping off the rabbit's head without much trouble. The boss had been killed, and so it was time to go back in. On the way back, Ro was uneasy about the battle. Would it really be that easy? This rabbit was quite weak, and the experienced Seekers themselves behaved strangely. Not worrying at all about the rear and fighting alone. There's obviously something wrong with him. The brow-headed boy interrupted Ro's musings, thinking it was strange that the Seekers were moving at such an unbelievable speed. He also thought it strange that they had encountered too few monsters along the way. At the same moment, someone put a hand on Ro's shoulder. Smiling suspiciously, the brown-haired guy motioned for him to move a little forward in the formation. Ro didn't disagree with the older man, even though he knew something was amiss. In the end, he and the other 2 newcomers that were standing behind everyone in the battle found themselves surrounded by 5 experienced explorers. It was obvious that these 5 were planning something. No sooner had they reached the exit than an unknown creature suddenly appeared in front of them. It turned out to be a monster, outwardly resembling a playing card combined with a wheel of fortune. It was clear from the faces of the elders that this was exactly what they had been waiting for. Just seeing this thing, one of the newcomers fell to the ground in fear. He immediately recognized this monster. Shouting in desperation that he was useful, the guy pointed his finger at Ro and suggested that he should be the one chosen as the victim. The invisible monster was exactly what those bastards brought the newcomers to the dungeon with them for. One day, returning home after another expedition, Nana told her brother that today they had stumbled upon an invisible monster. It's a really annoying creature that makes people vote for victims. At first, it just looks like roulette. Depending on the total number of researchers in the team, it is calculated how many people will be left for the monster to eat. When the choice is made, a real monster will appear and kill all those who have been chosen to be sacrificed. There are 60 seconds to vote. Unfortunately, no one knows what will happen if you don't choose targets within that time. Anyone who stayed to fight the invisible monster after the timer expired was forever in the dungeon. This thing makes people kill each other, but some people deliberately seek it out, all because of the rare items it gives in return for sacrifice. Ro then asked his sister if the person chosen in the vote had a chance of survival. And unfortunately, the chances of survival are extremely slim. Those who lose the vote will have to kill the monster, but given that they are often the weakest, they are immediately killed. Voting has begun. The minute timer has been started. An interactive window with images of all participants appeared in front of the researchers. This time the victims are supposed to be 2 people. Choosing Ro and that bangly guy, the experienced researchers decided to use the trash as expendable. The timer immediately reset to 0. All voting members except the losers left the dungeon. At the same second, the monster itself appeared. The whole time he was sitting inside that roulette card. Ro prepared for battle, while his partner dropped to his knees and began to whine about how they had no chance of winning. Then, glaring at him scornfully, Ro asked if he really wanted to die. In response, the Bangs guy explained that this boss was 4 times stronger than the guards. They wouldn't be able to defeat him. As soon as he said that, he received a powerful punch to the stomach. As it turned out, it was Ro who sent him flying with a lightning-fast swing of his leg. Thus he saved his snot-nosed partner from a swift attack by the enemy. After blocking the monster's blow, he jumped back to his squadmate lying on the ground. He then put his sword in front of him and said that he wasn't going to give up even though his opponent was much stronger. Without giving him a second to pause, the invisible monster pounced on him again. At the same time, the expedition of Kazami of the 7 Stars and his men to the S-rank gate near Mizuyasu village was coming to an end. Now, a quick clarification. This is not the gate the protagonist went to. Ro went to a low-level dungeon in a different location on the same day. So yes, we've moved a bit away from the storyline with his fight and into a different location. Standing in front of the portal, Charlie List waited for the explorers to exit. Soon someone's foot appeared out of the gate. Tengen Kazami-shun of the 7 Stars along with his men walked out of the dungeon with sad faces. After giving the extra weapon to his assistant, Kazami told Charlie that Tsuyoshi had been sacrificed. As it turned out, an invisible monster had appeared in the dungeon. The squad refused to sacrifice anyone, but Tsuyoshi stepped forward and voted for himself. Concerned about the situation, Charlie decided to ask if Kazami had eliminated the risk of Child of Luck. Though one of the 7 Stars tried to convince him that there was nothing to fear, the thug explained that he would have to check it out in person anyway. He has to vet the process, regardless of who does it, because the Child of Fortune is the biggest threat to humanity. A past Child of Fortune used the lives of 4 S-Class and 17 A-Class explorers to become a powerful assassin. Tsuyoshi is a strong kid, and if he becomes Child of Luck, Charlie will have no choice but to take the life of 7 Star. Summoning his assistant, Kazami asked her to report to the chief that from now on, S-Class was not the highest rank in the dungeon. The man put on his jacket and turned to Charlie again. That's when he told me that he had recently received a letter. This letter stated that Shining Light had been revived. Meanwhile, Ro's battle with the invisible monster continued. The enemy did not stop attacking the boy, causing him to quickly lose stamina. After another powerful blow, Ro was thrown aside and wounded in the chest. But the invisible monster possessed the ability to carry out even long-range attacks. He extended one of his tentacles and tried again to finish the guy off. Fortunately, Ro was able to dodge. As much as he hated to admit it, his Bangzi crybaby friend was right. This thing was indeed very powerful. However, if his enemy had 5 times the power of the Guardian, he would be dead by now. In other words, the bastard's just toying with him. The invisible monster can easily extend its limbs. This made Ro realize that fighting at a distance is not the best tactic for him. In addition, throughout the entire battle, this creature never moved its main body once. Assuming that the weakness of the thing was that it couldn't move, the boy made the decision to continue the fight at close quarters. As close as possible to his opponent, he tried to pierce him with his sword. At first, he thought it worked. However, he soon saw something that caused his confidence to be replaced by terror. Another jaw appeared on the monster's body, which immediately broke its sword. Having disarmed the boy, the enemy bound one of his legs. Playing with his victim, the monster lifted him into the air and began waving him from side to side like a flag. Having had enough of it, it slammed the guy into the ground with tremendous force. Ro's body was very well trained, but even it couldn't match such a powerful punch. Watching the monster bullying his partner, the Bangs guy couldn't understand why he kept fighting. No matter what methods he tries, he doesn't stand a chance. Having finally exhausted its victim, the creature brought it up to its muzzle. With its mouth wide open, it prepared to devour the boy. Ro never thought he'd die like this. Already on the verge of death, a vision appeared before his eyes. Holding out her hand to him, his younger sister invited him home. 4 years ago, City Cemetery. A month before, Kasumi Akoma had died trying to save Angie in the dungeon. They had been a wonderful couple. Kasumi was always looking out for Angie and making sure he didn't get depressed. Standing in front of their grave, Ro tried to convince his little sister that this tragedy was not her fault. Of course, Nana knew that. However, ever since Ikoma died on the job, she had become afraid that her brother would die someday as well. What will she do then? That's why she's determined to do what she can for Ro. Her big brother is worth more to her than her own life. Nana knew her brother was going to be an explorer too. As long as she was alive, she wasn't going to let it happen. That day, after stroking her head, Ro promised it would never happen. Plus, she's also the most important person to him, and so he's not going to ignore her wishes. Suddenly, the dying memories were cut short by someone's scream. Sprawling around, the Bangs guy punched the invisible monster. But unfortunately, his sword also shattered into pieces. Trembling with fear, he looked at what was left of his blade. In the same second, the monster kicked him in the stomach, knocking him back into the opposite wall. The flaky guy immediately lost consciousness. Now Ro had finally given up hope. The monster, clenching its jaws tightly, bit into the guy's right arm. The boy tried to unhinge the creature's jaws, but all was to no avail. He didn't want to die without finding out the truth about his little sister's death. No matter what happens, he won't let anyone get in his way. Deciding that he had no right to die in a place like this, Ro clawed at the monster's limb with his teeth. The enemy did not expect such an action, and so immediately cried out in pain, unhinging his jaws. Ro himself in turn had already completely bitten off the creature's tentacle. This allowed him to free himself from his opponent's dead grip. As he fell to the ground, he was already preparing to receive a backlash. As he suddenly looked up, he saw the invisible monster disappear for some reason. As it turns out, tentacles are the weak point of this creature. With his bite, Ro essentially destroyed the core of the invisible monster. Anyway, it's over for him too. With one last apology to Nana, the boy whispered that at least it was a draw. At the same moment, his body was almost completely healed for some reason. Lifting himself up, Ro saw a strange blue system window in front of him. This system window said that after defeating the monster, the user had acquired Hyper Heal, the disposable passive healing special item automatically applied. That was the only reason Ro survived this battle. In addition, after the battle, he had gotten the X reuse skill. Some time had already passed since that day, but the guy still couldn't figure out what exactly the skill was for. The notification simply said the name of the ability, but what exactly it did wasn't even mentioned. This time, Ro only survived by a miracle. It made him realize once again how weak he was. As the boy sat on the bed, he received a call on his phone from Koji-san. After speaking with him, Ro said he would go to the site immediately. Seeing his buddy, Koji Shimura greeted him with a smile. Explaining that they weren't ready yet, the man motioned for the guy to sit down. Koji asked his friend if his injuries were okay. Ro responded by saying that he was much better. Thanks to Hyper Heal, he was completely healed in a few days. Sighing heavily, Koji-san pointed out that most people in the dungeons were useless. A balanced and most importantly reliable team was desirable for safe travel on an expedition. Unfortunately, all the famous explorers had already recruited squads. One of the front-line members interrupted their conversation, reminding the support team that it was time to get to work. Offering to talk a little later, Koji said they needed to do their work first. Inside the dungeon, an unusual picture opened before them. As it turns out, it's a resource-rich dungeon with a boss that poses relatively little risk. Koji is disappointed to have been hired as a mere support on such an expedition. Yes, the views in this dungeon are beautiful, and it's safe to be here. But you shouldn't eat the first mushrooms you see, or you could get poisoned like this dude. They'll have to spend a lot of time gathering resources here. If Koji had known it would be so boring, he wouldn't have invited Ro here. But at least he could learn the finer points of collecting here. After all, there's quite a lot of weird and different things here. As Ro plucked another mushroom, Koji noticed it and warned him that the thing was useless. Meanwhile, the main squad had defeated one of the enemies. They called out to Koji and asked him to gather resources in the area, while the explorers from the front lines moved on. Turning back to his buddy, Koji-san beckoned for him to follow. Ro was about to get up when suddenly the mushroom in his hand began to act strangely. Suddenly the mushroom simply disappeared from his palm. Looking around, the boy saw this mushroom in the same place where it had originally grown. Only this time it looked strange. Trying to remember when he had time to drop that, Ro decided to follow Koji-san. Upon reaching the final room, the main squad finished off the guards and had Koji and his assistants clean up the place. For 20 minutes, the helpers continued to gather mushrooms and other useful ingredients. Today, Ro learned that the environment of a dungeon determines what grows in it. For example, his previous dungeon had a lot of minerals. This one has different plants growing in it. Having gotten a drawer full of useful resources, the guy was going to show it to Koji-san. But as he walked toward it, he didn't notice the rock lying under his feet. Stumbling, he dropped the box of mushrooms and fell right in front of the dead monster. His hand casually touched the monster's body. In the same instant, the creature disappeared before everyone's eyes. Such a sight threw everyone into a stupor. The monster's corpse was only supposed to disappear in 1 minute. Deciding that their watches had simply broken, the squad of helpers hurried out of the dungeon. Running out to return, Ro reported to Koji-san that he still had some work to do, and so he wouldn't be able to go to the association with them right now. After saying goodbye to Koji Shimura, the boy returned home in a hurry. Opening the system window, the guy saw that he had 2 flexible myceliums and 1 unusable mycelium in his inventory. These items had fallen to him from the mushroom he had picked then, and from the monster's now nearly vanished body. Previously, he was told that monster bodies were useless. But now, using the X-Reuse skill, the guy can recycle garbage and turn it into useful items. If he was lucky, maybe he could even get some skill. Very soon, however, Ro realized that he would not be able to use X-Reuse freely. He doesn't have the strength to defend himself. If someone finds out about something this cool, they'll try to take advantage of him. Taking a seat on the couch, the boy wondered what he should do in such a case. Right now, he's not strong enough to go into the dungeon alone. But even if he tries to use this skill when everyone is gone, there is still a chance that he will be caught. He should use X reuse without attracting attention. That's when Ro came up with a pretty good plan. Sure, it might bother Koji-san a bit, but Ro is sure to repay him for taking advantage of him. Meanwhile, in the domain of the Kazami of the Seven Stars, sitting up in bed, a bandaged bangs guy stares out the window. At the same moment, Kazami entered his room. The angry man asked the boy why he had quarreled with his father, and how he had gotten into the dungeon. The flaky guy in turn replied that it's his life, and he decides for himself what he wants to do. Kazami Sr. responded by saying that he himself would not mind if his brother decided to risk his life and do anything. On the contrary, he would respect his choice. But if he still cares about his family, he should value his life more. Being a researcher is not the only thing you can do in this life. Such words obviously made Kazami Jr. angry. Ask your brother to wait. He finally decided to tell him something. I want to leave the Kazami family, he said without a shadow of a doubt. After a while, Ro does exercise. The guy thinks he needs to enlist Koji's support to absorb more monsters. There are two main issues to be resolved. The first thing to do is to get some fake IDs and use them instead of the real one. This will reduce the level of risk. 2. Ask Koji to buy back the dungeons. Even a D-rank forest is richer in resources than a C-rank desert. Items produced in a dungeon depend on the environment. That's why some explorers sell dungeons. But if you don't use a trustworthy buyer, you'll often regret it later. So they need someone trustworthy with broad connections. Suddenly, Ro noticed someone approaching. It was the same guy he was in the dungeon with the invisible monster. Yasukage came to Ro to thank him for saving him and to ask him for a favor. The guy really wants to get back on the adventure with Ro. From what he heard, Ro was a little shocked. Yasukage noticed that Ro didn't have super strength, but that didn't stop him from fighting to the very end no matter what. Ro wondered if Yasukage had come straight to this place. He was probably gathering information on Ro. Yasukage didn't want to offend his savior in any way, but Ro advised him to find someone more capable and stronger than him, and asked him not to pursue him any further. Technically, Yasukage also helped Ro, so they're even. Also, Ro doesn't like people who give up so easily. Ro once again asked not to follow him. Yasukage was a little upset, but he wouldn't give up. After a while, Ro met up with Koji. The man managed to find a dungeon for sale, though it proved to be quite a difficult task. For some reason, the appearance pattern of dungeons is changing. Because of that, there are problems with the sale offers. And the information has become very expensive too. These changes are very suspicious, but most importantly, how it will affect the existence of humanity. Suddenly, a stranger interrupted their conversation. Could it be that Ro has a secret stalker? Ro explained that he'd been in a band with this guy before, and he'd been following him everywhere ever since. Koji called it popularity. The boy approached Yasukage to find out the real reason for his desire to go on a dungeon tour with Ro. But that cowardly boy kept repeating the same words over and over again. Mr. Ro is very strong, and the boy wants to become like him. Ro resists. He keeps saying that he's not really powerful. He's just an ordinary man like Yasukage. He's a scout who watches from behind the scenes. Ro realizes that the guy in front of him is no ordinary man off the street. He asks him not to waste his time. Yasukage is not an ordinary man, and has interacted with many strong researchers. But he has never met anyone who fought so desperately for his life despite the obvious advantage of the enemy. Yasukage really wants to become a desperate fighter like Ro. He was tired of being in his older brother's shadow. Ro heard something familiar. Could it be that he was speaking for the same man? Once upon a time, Nana brought a picture of the 7 stars with her. The group was able to get together and take a full photo. It had everyone in it. Shun Shun is Yasukage's sibling. They're both from the Kazumi family. Though they are brothers, they are quite different from each other. Their personalities are totally opposite. What kind of education does the Kazami family give? Ro once again refuses Yasukage. He doesn't want to coddle anyone, but just wants to live a quiet life. Yasukage couldn't find the right words to change Ro's mind in any way. Koji intervened in the conversation. It was time to get to work. Ro said goodbye to Yasukage and headed for the dungeon. Upon entering the cave, the explorers found the body of a monster that looked like a large octopus. The job seemed like a lot of work. One of the workers resented the monster's body because it would be impossible to move it to get to the resources. Another researcher has to hurry because today is his daughter's birthday. Ro kindly offered to leave the job to him. There's nothing precious here anymore. He can take care of the rest. The man thanked the guy and promised to give him a treat next time as a token of his appreciation. Lately, Ro has only found ordinary materials, and this time he's hoping for more valuable loot from this monster. As soon as the guy touched the tentacle with his hand, the monster's body began to disappear. Acquired. Dried octopus tentacle 3 PCS. Octopus skin damaged 1 PCS. But the most valuable skill was bronze body. This skill can increase physical durability. If you train with it combined with defense arts, your physical durability will increase significantly. At this moment, one of the explorers returned to the dungeon. The man was surprised, for the monster's body had disappeared somewhere. What did the guy do to him? Ro has hidden the dagger behind his back and is trying his best to confuse the man who has entered the dungeon. The man showed a wristwatch. He calculated the time and understands perfectly well when the corpse should have disappeared. Ro is trying to come up with some excuse for the monster's early disappearance. But is there anything he could say that would sound convincing? But more likely, there's nothing to convince this man. Ro tries to humor me by talking about how he just got back here himself and the body is already gone. The man doesn't believe a word he says. He punches the guy in the face and asks him to stop cheating. He personally saw the monster die 10 minutes ago. The man offers one last chance to tell the truth. Suddenly, Ro stabs the man with a dagger. After that, he delivers a punch to the neck, knocking his opponent to the ground. The man falls to the ground. He didn't expect the guy to be able to do that. Ro drew his dagger. He was giving the man a chance to get back up. After these actions, Ro began to move toward the exit as if nothing had happened. The man stared after him. Could these rumors be true? His eyes began to slowly close. After a while, Ro washes his hands clean of blood. Guy looks at himself in the mirror. He realizes he's committed murder. But what's weirder, he even seemed to enjoy it. In a world where it's unclear whether the law even function, murder isn't anything unusual. He's not going to make excuses. Murder is murder. But he won't let anyone get in his way. It's been a month. Ro's still involved in the dungeon sweep. He tries to take his time and finish his work at the very last minute to prevent situations like the one that led to the victims. Many people were skeptical of his work because he was the last to finish each time, finding many excuses for his tardiness. This time, the reason for his delay was a sprained ankle. His partners asked him to be careful and to keep track of time. In the meantime, since the cleanup is over, they ask that the collected materials be handed over to the principal investigator. Ro for many has already become their trusted workmate. The newcomers wondered how this guy is trusted to transfer all the booty to the chief researcher, because he can easily steal something. But for all this time, Ro has earned a lot of trust. He gladly takes on any task and performs it honestly. As of late, a lot of people are trying to get on a working group with him. One of the employees asked why he would even work if he was Shining Light's big brother. Perhaps something happened to his sister and he's trying to help it somehow, but why in a hole like this? So many questions and so few answers. After a while, Ro heads home with his purchases. Walking past the alleyways, the guy spotted someone. Ro asked him to stop following him. Yasukaj is nervous because he's perfectly hidden and can't be seen. Ro walks over to the stalker and grabs him by the shoulder. Greatly frightened, Yasukaj screamed. He started to stagger back, and as a result, he hit his head on the wall. Ro is surprised because for a coward like this guy, he's good at tracking people down. But here, covert stalking takes practice. Yasukaj asks for one single chance again. Yasukaj asks again for a single chance, but his strength is running low, and he's beginning to have doubts and sometimes considers giving up. Ro doesn't utter a word, and silently continues walking home. Yasukaj started to follow the guy and talk about how he probably found something he could be useful for. Ro smiled. What could be the use of such a weak man? Yasukaj said he could be useful in selling the goods that Ro is trying to sell. The main character was troubled. He didn't like that this kid was able to sniff out his business. Yasukaj saw the menacing look on Ro's face and began to explain what had happened in more detail. Yasukaj saw the menacing look on Ro's face and began to explain in detail what had happened. Yasukaj has connections and won't pry out more than necessary. This will definitely be good for Ro. Even though Yasukaj doesn't have the power, he has enough value to make up for it. If Ro keeps selling alone, sooner or later someone will notice. Maybe teaming up with this guy wouldn't be so bad. Ro tried to say something, but something stopped him. There was a noise outside. In such a safe place, there was an explosion. Looking at a neighboring building, they noticed two human silhouettes on the roof. It was Yasukaj's older brother, but who was the other person? Next to him, an unknown person in a white cloak was flying in the air. The guy in the mask didn't expect to catch one of the 7 stars. It was a pretty big fish. Shun pointed his hand at his opponent using some sort of skill. Its power was able to muss his hair and tear his hood. The unknown man wondered why the guy immediately started attacking. Didn't he want to ask or learn anything about his opponent? Shun just closed his eyes. Apparently he had very different plans. To him it was of no consequence. The unknown man was puzzled. A brightly colored villain who appeared spectacularly in public. He had to work hard to make a living, so he could show a little respect and cooperate. Shun is willing to cooperate, but only after he kills him. It was to be expected of divine right to be so ruthless. Unknown thought it was rude, but they can do it. Shun attacks first and throws himself into the fray. Unknown blows the fireball he just created off the palm of his hand. Shun tries to counter with a takedown. As soon as the fireball and sword make contact, there is a violent explosion. At the same instant, Shunshun's sword appears from the cloud of smoke. Unknown easily stops his attack, as he expected his opponent would not be too easy. At the same moment, a second sword point approaches the unknown man's right ear. Shunshun clobbers his opponent with a jab to the near side of the face. The second sword flies out of the hands of the unknown cloaked man. Shunshun pulls it to him and catches it with his hand. The guy is surprised. He now has new information regarding Shunshun. Now he knows this guy has a two-sword skill. Smiling, the guy said, starting to get nervous. While the two fight, Yasukage and Ro continue to monitor the situation. Younger brother pulls forward slightly. He wants to do something about it. Ro grabs the guy's shoulder sharply. Does he really think he can help his brother in any way? Even if he bravely rushes forward, he will simply be killed. If he truly cares about his brother, he should prioritize his own safety. Shunshun is the strongest leader of the 7 stars. But who is this guy in a robe? How can he be so confident that he can handle him one-on-one? Ro grabs his phone and takes a picture of his attacker. Yasukage realizes that it's the smartest move to remain unnoticed, but is there really no other option? Ro turns around and heads home. They have to do what they can. A moment later, the boys are standing at the door from Ro's apartment. Ro promises to think about the proposal and get in touch as soon as he thinks things through well. Yasukage asks the guy to hang on a minute longer, but at that moment the door closes in his face. He hoped he could participate too. Once inside the apartment, Ro began searching for information about the mystery man. He downloaded all the data into the computer and tried to find any clue. Ro is scrutinizing every frame. There has to be something that will help this case. In one of the shots, the guy notices a strange emblem on the inside of his cape. He's urgently calling someone and asking for attention to the mark. I need any information regarding this image he just sent. About 30 minutes passed and the long-awaited call came. The voice on the phone told me it was A-rank researcher Komori Amon. The design is based on his favorite cat, but he was confirmed dead last August. Ro was surprised because they said dead, not fallen in the line of duty. That's right. He wasn't killed in the dungeon. He died near the entrance to an A-rank dungeon. Apparently the body was in a horrifying state, but the culprit still hasn't been identified. The voice from the phone inquired where the guy had seen that coat of arms. This question made Ro suspicious as to why he was inquiring about something like that. In any case, if Ro has seen this or noticed this symbol somewhere, he should stay away. Unless the person on the other end of the line is mistaken, that mark means it's a plunder. Ro doesn't understand what war trophies we might be talking about. The guy opened the balcony door. Stepping onto the balcony, he noticed an unknown man in a white robe leaving the place. The voice on the phone goes on to explain that this emblem was probably a common trophy that denotes a symbol of victory. Ro asks to share any leads the person on the other end of the phone has. Stealing someone's crest and keeping it as a trophy, as far as he knows, only a group called Cruz does that. And the man in the footage is shrouded in more mystery than Cruz Boss. All that's known so far is that he's called Z, and nothing else is known about him. Ro wonders what this strange organization is. The girl sitting in front of the guy asks him to put her on speakerphone so she can hear their conversation too. As the guy puts it on speaker on his phone, he wonders if Ro has heard anything about these guys. Nana mentioned them once. If that's the case, then Ro should know that this is an international group with a pretty complex structure. And the important thing is that they're pretty crazy, but they have a strong unity. There was silence for exactly a moment. Apparently, he was thinking of something. Realizing what's going on, the guy asks Ro to stay out of it and investigate alone. Ro asks to share all the information he knows and not to lie. Rumors about Nana have already spread in some circles, and it will soon become public. Ro wants to understand where these rumors got their roots, where exactly he heard it. At that moment, the girl holds out a business card that says Daisy. The guy explains it's some kind of Daisy trading company. They deal in information, but they're not shady enough to sell this kind of stuff. The guy got wind of the rumors, and he got the chairman to give details. Ro understood, and asked him to continue collecting information about who collects trophies just enough so that it doesn't hurt him. The boy asked what Ro planned to do now. Most likely, if the rumors about Nana spread, he'll need to move. That was the end of their conversation, and Ro hung up the phone. The guy had started preparing the moment he suspected Koji might have reported Nana's death, but he hadn't expected the association to hide it so carefully. He just glad they weren't using her as bait for profit. After a while at the training center, Ro continues to practice the defensive arts. Guy notices a punch coming at him from the left side. He takes the attack with his body. He was just in time to duck and put his shoulder to the ground. The onslaught of vehicles continues. Once the robots got dangerously close for some reason, they stopped. At that moment, Charlie walked into the training room. He was impressed with how quickly the boy was developing. Ro thanked Charlie for being a good mentor. The man said it wasn't his fault because he hadn't taught him much. And the guy's only been here a few times. Normally, someone with a body like Ro's, no matter how talented, wouldn't be able to handle 2 training robots in such a short amount of time. Ro realizes it's all thanks to the system and its improvements. Charlie realizes that something is wrong here, but he's not going to ask what's wrong because that would be unnecessary curiosity. Well, the other question is why he's here today. After all, the boy had certainly not come for training. Ro looked at Charlie in silence. Apparently, the guy came to find out about Kazami Shunshun, who almost caused a disaster. Charlie took a seat on the step and motioned for the boy to join him. What happened that day? It almost destroyed the entire city of Miku. It was quite shocking. He may seem cold-blooded, but when he snaps, it's over. That fight with the White Robe was nothing. White Robe was strong, the only one who had ever gotten Kazami this far. But the big question is how he provoked Kazami Shun, because Shun was on the verge of losing control as a result. Ro must have heard from Shining Light that Kazami is the strongest of the 7 stars, but that's assuming he's not curbed. The truth is, Kazami is the only one of the 7 stars with a limiter. If it's removed, he'll eventually become a killing machine. In those days, the ranks of the 7 stars were based on strength. First place went to Nana. She was the strongest, so the records say. But at the same time, they said that Kazami Shun was truly the strongest of them all. Ro was certainly interested in hearing it, but that wasn't why he'd come here. Or rather, it wasn't what he wanted to hear. If the guy didn't come to find out about Kazami, then he wants to find out about the White Robe. That's exactly what Ro was interested in. Charlie is ready to tell, but he wants to hear a good reason. Nana didn't die just from a dungeon run. These guys must have known that long ago. Charlie agreed with the guy's assertion. Charlie said he had planned to use Ro as bait to lure out the white coat, but now Ro can safely retreat. Ro was confused. Charlie was plotting to keep the guy in the dark. Charlie explained that if he told him, there was no going back. But if the guy hears it now, there's a 99% chance he'll die, which goes against the wishes of the Shining Light. Does he really want to know everything? How far he's willing to go? White Robe, a member of a brand new, completely unknown band called the Saints, and 7 stars are forced to choose a new member. Ro inquired why suddenly invite a newcomer. Is it really because of these Saints? Charlie replies that they don't know anything about the Saints, but their target is clear. Ro tries to figure out who they are targeting. Are they looking for all the Seekers or just the 7 stars? Either way, it's the same thing. If all the Seekers are destroyed, he'll end up meeting the 7 stars. On the other hand, if he takes the 7 stars, the rest of the Seekers are essentially worthless. The only thing they know is his code name. Anyway, the villains always say the same thing. They just start ranting on their own. It's like some cult that worships a dark god. And to a large extent, there are idiots like that at all times and in every era. Ro inquired if any of them had chosen a Shining Light already. Charlie asked that even if there is a saint-level threat, do they really need to find a replacement so quickly? At this point, the guy seemed to have guessed one little trick coming from the 7 stars. To him, Nana is not just a shining light. She is his little sister. 7 stars. It is their nation's strongest shield and spear. If Nana's death becomes public, the country will definitely fall into chaos. After that phrase, Ro realized the full picture. Much to Charlie's dismay, it was the only way out. The guy was furious. He was trying to understand why no one was telling him the truth. The association's job now is to find a new actor to replace her sister. And so that no one will know that Nana is dead, all the news will say that she is still alive, but in a different place. From the beginning, it was a well-thought-out plan. Charlie tried to warn the guy that several countries had made alliances and opened a hunt for him. The guy didn't care, because from the beginning no one wanted to listen to him, and the whole thing turned out to be an unfinished play. Ro leaves to deal with his problems, and Charlie holds his head. He said right away he wanted no part of this. After a while, the guy comes to some woods. According to the map, he's in the right place. And due to recent events, he won't be able to go to the guild for a while. And self-learning has its limits. That's why he only has this plan left. He had to pay a fortune for this information. He really hopes it is up to date. After making his way through the dense thickets, the guy finally found the portal. The Daisy Trading Company was incredible. They were able to find the entrance to the dungeon in such a remote location. Wasting no time, the guy walks into it. In front of him was a cave filled with water and sparse trees and plants. Ro picks up a rock from the ground and hurls it into the middle of the pond. Suddenly, a huge shark jumps out of the water trying to grab a rock. The guy must have been completely out of luck. He was planning to train here, but from the looks of it, it's not going to work out. Ro wants to check out what else this cave is hiding. Quickly jumping from rock to rock, he approaches the middle of the pool. At this point, the shark tries to attack again. Ro stops her with an armbar and slams her back into the water. This is the first time in his life he's ever been so annoyed by a fish. Before he can think about it properly, At that moment, several more aggressive sharks try to grab the guy. Ro tries to return to the entrance to the dungeon, but one of the sharks blocks his way. The guy fends off the shark with one left jab, which seems very easy. Back at the entrance, the guy is glad the amphibians don't show up in Irang's dungeons. Otherwise, there's no way he could have handled so many. Before I could finish my thought, the sharks started jumping out of the water, and they landed already on land, leaning on two paws. Ro looks on in horror at what is happening. Is this some kind of prank? The carnage begins. Apparently, a fish cannery is going to open here. After a while, the guy was the only survivor in that room. He was very lucky he wasn't pulled underwater. After catching his breath a little, Ro began to reap the fruits of his labors. It was quite the catch. In addition to meat and scales, the guy also got some shark eyes. They say water monster pearls are good for the skin, but who would use something so crude? In any case, getting 2 pearls from all these monsters is quite a good reward. After all, even the bosses have a low level of rare item drop. Ro walked further down the hallway and into the next room. The guy saw a big butterfly sitting on a flower in front of him. Could it be the boss? Butterflies are generally deadly, their scales often causing hallucinations. The real danger is that they can be poisonous. Ro throws his dagger straight at the target. Maybe he'll get it out of there. The blade hits the target precisely. The strange liquid filling the hole around the flower the butterfly was sitting on begins to disappear. As soon as the water completely disappeared, the root of the flower could be seen. But the most interesting thing was that in those roots was a large, shining stone. Ro abruptly grabbed his dagger. Was the butterfly just a show-off and the swarm of fish a real threat? The guy's swinging a camping knife. And again, it's a clean hit. The crystal shatters into tiny shards. Maybe it wasn't that bad and the guy got lucky today after all. If this was a real boss, Ro would probably be dead by now. The guy crouched next to the butterfly to get some useful resources. Touching it, he saw the notice. Acquired. Serendipity 1 PCS. One day you'll have an unexpected encounter. After a while, Ro was jogging. Suddenly, Koji came across his path. Ro scooted closer and greeted the man. Koji noticed how the boy is getting stronger day by day. Also, Koji is looking for a reliable team, so he decided to introduce the boy to someone. The man promised to send him their contact information a little later. This time, Koji still had a lot of different questions. One of them had to do with the corpses of the dungeon bosses. Why was Ro collecting them? But the guy just said nothing in response. However, since the dungeon's patterns had started changing, no one was selling dungeons anymore. To break down more corpses, Ra was asking Koji for info on anyone selling dungeons or boss corpses. Not getting an answer to the first question, Koji asked the next one. Since Koji is helping the guy a lot, he wants to know what Ro and Nana have in common, if there's any news from her. Do rumors really spread so fast? Thought Ro. Koji said that there were rumors about Nana, or rather, that something bad had happened to her. When something happens to the 7th star, everyone panics. In addition, the rules for passing dungeons are changing for the members of the Seekers Guild as well, so the entire crowd in the Seekers Guild is very alarmed. Ro began to reassure Koji. The guild would take care of it quickly, so there was no point in worrying. Nana said that her mission would be over soon, and when she returned, they'd all have dinner. And probably the last question Koji wanted to ask was where Ro had been lately. I've been holed up doing intense training, answered the boy. Ro was evasive again, for in truth he was biding his time in the dungeons. Koji listened to everything the guy told him. Whether he believed him or not, we won't know yet. The answers were all very logical. The guy had a good fit, great mood. On that note, they said goodbye. The man went about his business and Ro stared intently in his wake. The boy wondered for a moment if he was stronger. Would he be able to get his little sister back? After a while, Ro returned home and found Yasukage at the front door. Yasukage was glad to see him. Ro wondered how long the boy had been waiting for him here. Full of optimism, Hachiko said it wasn't long at all, about 10 days. Ro walked into the apartment, followed by Yasukage, and asked in a trembling voice if he could come inside. Ro replied emotionlessly, "You can leave now." Yasukage is overjoyed, as Ro should make him his teammate. Isn't Yasukage always so friendly? Ro pondered the boy's proposal. If the only thing he wanted was to go to the joint dungeons, the answer would be no. If Yasukage thinks that Ro is very strong, then unfortunately for him, it's a mistaken opinion, and they have nothing more to talk about. There's something else they can be good allies in. The question is whether Yasukage can do it. Ru want Guy to sell something for him over a long period. Guy will get 30%, and Ru will get 70%. Don't care how he sell it, but one condition. Don't let anyone know Ru is involved. Yasukage agrees to help. He's quite familiar with business skills. Ro can also help with a training plan for the guy if that's what he wants. A new business partner is incredibly happy to hear such news. That's a good place to end it for now. Ro is very busy and asks Yasukage to go to his house. Ro provided the guy with a phone number and said he would contact him soon to discuss details. 7 days later, Ro went on another dungeon sweep. The dungeon info Daisy Trading gives is getting further out into the countryside. This time they bought info on 3 E-rank dungeons from Daisy Trading. They're in remote areas, far apart from each other. Good location dungeons are in high demand and rarely appear on the market. Also, with dungeon patterns changing, Daisy Trading is selling fewer dungeons. Also, Ro didn't get any coherent answers before he left, but there's hope that younger brother Kazami will be there with good news. Another gateway to the dungeons is in the Bamboo Grove location. Suddenly, a very strange snake pounced on the guy, but Ro managed to fend off its attack. It was very strange. Animals should avoid dungeons. She shouldn't be at the entrance like this. But what if it's because of the changes in the dungeon layout? That could bode big trouble. We have to hurry. Ro walks into the portal. This place turned out to be quite familiar. The scenery is similar to the real world, but the flow of time seems different from outside. Once again, an unexpected attempt at an attack. This time it was a piece of bamboo. But no sooner had the lad stood up than the very same snakes immediately swooped in. One snake was cut right in the air. The other was clenched in his fist, after which they tossed in a live corn cob or whatever it was. The numbers of monsters keeps increasing. At this rate, they're stuck. After running a few meters away, Ro stopped. Something wasn't going the way he'd expected. All the monsters stopped attacking. It was as if the guy was outside their range. Ro is a bit frustrated, as he was unable to collect such a large amount of good material. But there is a very promising cave ahead. As he got closer, the guy saw the unknown man. First thought, since it's a dungeon, it's probably a humanoid monster. But why would it suddenly appear in an E-rank dungeon? Humanoids are the rarest monster type. Since dungeons appeared, fewer than 100 have been confirmed. Another reason so few have been confirmed is that everyone who's seen a humanoid has died. The mysterious humanoid asked if they had met anywhere before. What could this all mean? Since there isn't even a system message. Maybe it's a new feature or he's not a monster. Once Nana told me that there are monsters that ask questions forcibly. Based on your answer, the strength of the monster is determined. If the answer is wrong, the enemy becomes stronger. If it is correct, it becomes weaker. Still not hearing an answer from Ro, the elf changed the topic of conversation. He wants to watch all of these 4 movies, but he has to choose only one. The elf wonders which movie he should choose. Ro can't figure out what's going on here. This humanoid does not attack, and its parameters are hidden. This is all very strange. Ro can barely pass through E-Rang's dungeons alone, and this guy standing in front of him, Ro obviously can't beat him. If the elf is so eager to watch 4 movies, why not watch them all? The humanoid replied that good movies deserve to be watched leisurely. What kind of movies do you like? Ro asked. But there was a problem with that, for the elf loves all kinds. If the choice is so hard, why not use a dice and use it to pick a winner? If they're all good and each worthy of their own attention, that's probably the easiest and only way to go. The elf liked the idea. He wants to figure out how to use it to pick out a movie. Ro cautiously moved closer. He has no information about this humanoid. It is likely that he will definitely lose in a battle with him, so it is worth playing along carefully. The guy throws the dice without any sudden movements, and the number 3 falls out. The elf was glad, for the choice had fallen on the very movie he wanted to watch the most. Ro was confused. For a few minutes ago, he had been saying that he wanted to see them all equally badly. The movie cards disappeared, and the elf pulled the book he'd been holding in his hand all this time closer to him. Seeing the sudden movements, Ro jumped back and got into a defensive stance. The humanoid wondered why the guy was acting rather strange again. Ro was trying not to frame his actions as hostile. The boy wondered why the elf had started flipping through the book. The elf explained that he was trying to pick out a good gift for the guy. Quickly flipping through the book, the elf wants to think of something special and good for Ro. The pages stopped. "Let's go with this," said the elf and pulled one leaf out of the book. The humanoid thanked the boy. He threw a leaf from the book into the air and asked to accept the gift. The torn page from the book began to float slowly in the air and turned into a golden wristwatch. There are good people in the human race, but I advise you not to be easily fooled by them. After saying that, the elf said goodbye to the boy. He hopes to meet again soon. The humanoid leaves the dungeon through the summoned portal. Ro couldn't fully comprehend what had happened. A monster that gives gifts to a human unbelievable. Acquired, wristwatch. Note, first, after equipping, wind it up to view your own status. Second, negates a fatal blow once, item disappears after using active skill. No doubt the most dangerous humanoid monster. Yet all his conversations were so pure, and to hand out such a rare item casually. Who is he? After a while, Seiyu Capital, Seiyu Arena. The guy who's helping Ro with the information is at the site. He's very bored and not interested in following a bunch of newbies. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing here. After getting a notification on his phone, the guy decided to check out who it could be. Looks like someone is about to get yelled at and outraged again. Rarely had someone tried to call him so often. More than 10 missed calls. That's quite an accomplishment. Ro politely asked where his interlocutor was, to which he received a specific answer: the arena, fights of newcomers. Having dropped the formalities, Ro began to ask what the guy knew about humanoid monsters. The boy perked up dramatically, wondering if Ro had met one of them in the dungeon. Truth be told, Ro was inquiring from the completely wrong person, for humanoids were extremely rare. Because of this, there is very little information. Even the 7 stars, who are constantly in the dungeons, hardly see any of them. None of the notes about the dungeons that the guy had managed to gather had any mention of humanoids. Dungeon memo. Rare item dropped in dungeons containing detailed info about dungeon. Everything written in it is 100% true. One of humanity's most desired items. The humanoid that Ro had seen today looked dangerous, but it had no attack power. The guy on the phone started to wonder if Ro had killed him. Even if it is there any problem with that? Ro asked. The guy replied that it was a huge loss. If he was right, then the one Ro met was Lithius. A strange humanoid profile doesn't show up. That's why nobody knows his name. But those who meet him get rare items. A person who met him 5 years ago got an item that could stop time for 3 seconds. But for some reason, this information was carefully hidden from public view. The boy wanted to say something else, but a sudden noise in the arena interrupted him. The selection of newcomers always causes a big stir. Why do anything really important at all if the selection is done in this way? Ro realized that his acquaintance was now at the Explorers Tournament. Who is the organizer of this event? At this point, Ro looked at his watch and began to start the mechanism. And in that instant, a window with his characteristics appeared in front of the guy. The whole thing was like an information window, like in some game. The guy keeps talking for the selection. Even though the 7 stars are here, they ask him to keep order. Ro inquired as to which of the 7 stars are currently in the contest. There were 2 of them, Caillou Fischl and Tanky North. Fischl was about to completely lose his mind. If the guy wasn't in his shoes and was trying to pick anyone out of this bunch of weaklings, he'd feel the same way. There's a nightmare going on in the arena. Some problems have arisen, and the guy needs to stop Fischl before he explodes. At this point, the guy says goodbye to Ro. But as soon as he passed out, he remembered what he wanted to say. Information about Lithius had not been widely disseminated, to avoid any misunderstandings. The guy hopes it's not that important information and probably doesn't pose any problems. A short time later, at the headquarters of the leaders of the Explorers Association, Fischl, Charlie, and one other person are having a conversation. Charlie wonders at the man if he's done. Jugasaki Kai, Explorer Association Chairman. The old man asks you to wait a little longer. Charlie has been waiting for 2 hours, and Fischl was late on purpose, apparently knowing that he would be. The blonde explained that he had important business to attend to, and had reported it in advance. The old man asks the researchers to accomplish 2 tasks. The first, Fischl must train the new candidates. The second, Charlie is needed for a special investigation. Charlie and Fischl unanimously refuse to run the errand. Kai doesn't understand why they are acting so intemperate. Fischl sees no point in coaching such weaklings because they'll probably just die. Well, even so, it's more honorable than losing in that tournament. Fischl's reluctance is understandable, but what is Charlie's reason? The man explains that he doesn't have enough time or opportunity. He needs a vacation. At that moment, the old man gets a message on his phone. Kai is unwilling to listen to excuses and orders the task to be completed as soon as possible. After all, he had agreed to it 3 days ago. As Charlie tried to turn away from it, the old man repeated that it was an order. If that's an order, then Fischl wants Alpha to give it personally. Charlie doesn't understand why there's such a rush, and how one can choose real fighters for training from such garbage. It's a very difficult task. The old man is either an idiot or there's some other reason. Kai also wondered why and to whom the information about Lithius had been sent. As soon as Charlie heard these questions, he immediately agreed to carry out the order. The old man needs their intuition and strength to get good results. Meanwhile, at one of the residences, Yasukage and Ro are engaged in physical training. Kazami Jr. runs a few laps and falls to the ground. Ro asks in surprise if the guy has never worked out before. Yasukage replied that he jogged every day, but it was only a few thousand steps. Ro looked at the guy, and again advised him to stop training immediately. Even if the guy didn't succeed in becoming an explorer, he would be able to live his life in such a way that those around him admired him. Yasukage explains that he was very sick as a child, and his body has been incredibly weak ever since. But there must be some way to heal this. Kazami Jr. did what he could. He called all the hospitals and many healer researchers. What about the dungeons? Ro asked. After all, there are countless rare items in the dungeons, so there should be a cure for all diseases there. Dungeon drops are pure luck, and many important people are after them. Unless they're stupid, no one would report finding it. Wasn't there anyone willing to trade? Ro asked. Yasukage said that there was a monster he could negotiate with. Ro immediately realized who he was talking about, but made a surprised face as if he were hearing the information for the first time. As the kid expected, Kazami Jr. mentioned the name Liteus. Playing dumb, Ro tried to find out even more information about this humanoid. Yasukage assumed that Alpha of the 7 Stars had met the elf before. For some reason, the Alpha didn't fight, but started talking. It was said that the Alpha's weapon was a gift from Liteus. Since then, there have been others who have met the elf. He not only gives away rare items for free, but also bargains fairly. Charlie provided information for Ro a while back, but it didn't say anything about fair dealing. Maybe they deliberately covered it up. And what he'd heard on the phone from Yui was still unclear too. After a little thought, Ro asks Kazami Jr. for access to his villa. Yasukage is kind enough to provide his villa for Ro. Now the guy will be able to train alone, since most of the combat resources belong to the association or guild. He wants no debts to the association or to belong anywhere, but buying them. He doesn't want to touch his little sister's stuff as much as possible. Half a month later, Ro returns to his house and notices his door is broken down. He cautiously steps inside. Looking at the door, it looks as if it were made of absorbent cotton blown away by the wind. The guy looks around carefully. Suddenly, a flying object grazes the guy's cheek. Something that looks like a pencil meets the wall behind Ro. In front of the guy in the chair sat Fischl. "Is this really the way to greet the 7 stars?" asked Ro. Holding up a picture of Nana, he wondered if the worthless older brother was standing in front of him. Ro came closer, tried to snatch the photo frame. He demanded it back. Fischl doesn't think the guy deserves the photo. Ro comes very close and repeats again that he wants Nana's photo back. "What if I say no?" said Fischl. At the same moment, Ro swings his fist. Fischl easily stops the punch and asks the weakling not to be so cocky. The blonde man grabs the guy by the neck and pins him against the wall. What right does he have to call himself her brother if he's never been to her grave? Ro remembered her last birthday party in which she wanted to spend it at home with her brother. Just the two of them. Remembering this, the guy got very angry and grabbed Fischl's arm. He was able to get out of the hold and wrestle the blonde man's arm away. Ro trying to punch his opponent. Fischl sees the trajectory of his moves and dodges with ease. But suddenly something went wrong. Ro made it look like he was just trying to throw an arm bar, at which point, while his opponent was distracted, he hit him with a knee. The guy doesn't grab the blonde by the hair and wants to slap his face properly. Fischl intercepts the guy's arm but gets caught in his distraction again. Ro tries to land a leg kick, but Fischl manages to get it blocked. That's when the guy takes the picture frame away. Why should Ro have to listen to accusations against him from this particular person? The guy releases the torn hair from his palm and demands to leave his house. Fischl doesn't know what's going on, because the last time he saw him, the guy was the kind of guy who would get out of breath just going up and down the stairs. For some reason, Fischl was keeping tabs. At that moment, Nana's brother seemed quite frail to him. Why, now that Nana was dead, he decided to become strong? Because before, he didn't care what people said about Nana. They thought she was stupid, or maybe she was being blackmailed by her brother. That otherwise, there's no way she'd support some piece of trash like that. Fischl was the first to constantly fight and explore, risking his life and helping Nana since she joined the 7 Stars. That's why Fischl has the right to say what he said the first time he saw her brother. He was always at her side, except for that one day he wasn't there for her. If he had been there then, she wouldn't have died. He had to protect her. Blondie doesn't understand why it happened that particular day either. Nana often said that her older brother was the kindest man in the world to her. I guess she didn't know he was so cold. Ro said that Fischl had no right to poke his nose into their relationship. He better tell me why he wasn't there that day or he's out of here. Fischl doesn't understand why he would tell him this, if the guy is up to something. Ro doesn't believe Nana sacrificed herself. After all, Nana had an item that allowed her to instantly escape from the dungeon. Fischl said she wouldn't have used it. Didn't want to or couldn't, Ro asked. Fischl should know that special items like forced escape don't have strict conditions of use. Does the guy really think someone made it so she couldn't use it? Fischl asked. Based on Nana's personality, there's no way she'd use it to abandon her teammates and escape alone. But there's no traitor in Nana's party. I'd stake my life on that, said Fischl. But what if someone did use a special? When someone enters a dungeon, it becomes temporarily sealed. If someone used a special item to force their way in, the boss's stats would double. A boss you could normally beat turns into a major threat. The movements of 7 Stars are top secret, so either there's a traitor, or the enemy's intel network is godlike. Let's say there's no traitor, and no enemy forcing their way in. But Nana was in a situation where she couldn't use the special item tie escape. Ceiling-type special items put the dungeon into a lockdown state. They eliminate all oxygen inside in under 3 minutes. Even destroying the Dungrun core won't let you escape. You'd have to use a forced escape item. Maybe she handed over the item to help a teammate. That much he could imagine, but special items are extremely rare. So compared to the life of 7 Stars member, they're nothing. That day, Fischl was supposed to go with Nana, but he received a distress call. It was from the son of one of the higher-ups, some weakling who had no business being in A-Rang's dungeon. After that, he investigated. But apart from the abuse of power, nothing else came to light about the parents and the child. Fischl considered the possibility that Nana had been framed, and that someone had framed someone else. But there was no evidence. No matter how much he dug around, he found nothing. What about you? How can you say with certainty that Nana didn't die in battle? Fischl asked. She promised me. Said she'd definitely come back. In my whole life, replied Ro. It seemed that Fischl was beginning to understand why Nana cared so much for the guy. The blond man took the sword he had brought with him in his hand. Removing the coiled cloth from him, the guy revealed a red, beautiful sword. This is the sword that Nana used. She always carried 2. One's still in the dungeon. Now Fischl's giving it back to the boy. Ro was very happy to receive it, but looking at the sword, the boy was enveloped in sadness. So far, that's all Fischl can do for Nana's brother. Did the other members agree to taking this sword out? Ro asked. Why would I need anyone's permission to return Nana's belongings to Gear family? Replied Fischl. The blonde also handed the guy a business card. Fischl doesn't know what the guy is planning to do now, but even if he tries to uncover the truth about Nana's death, with his current powers, he won't succeed even if he starts. The blonde didn't even think about the things Ro had told him. But don't even let him think he'd won or anything. Until the guy figures it out, Fischl will look after Ro instead of Nana. And especially now all combat resources are pretty much monopolized. Ro was just thinking about learning how to wield a sword. Maybe the guy should thank Fischl for such a useful card. Now he can really get serious about this. There's one more thing a guy should know. Nana's successor has been decided. Who is it? Ro asked. After a while at the cafe, Yasukaj rushes over to Ro apologizing for being late. He ran into some weirdo and ended up being late. Kazami Jr. didn't look good, but kept saying that luck was on their side. On his way here, he ran into a man. A man was attacking people with a knife on Aokawa Street. Fortunately, no one's life was in danger, they say. But the victim had apparently hit someone on purpose on Amanishi Street before, and then went straight to Aokawa Street still carrying the knife. Ro continued to drink his coffee calmly, but he wasn't surprised at all by what was happening. As long as dungeons existed, weirdos would just keep appearing. Whether it's an explorer or an ordinary person, life is tough. But let's not talk about the sad part. Ro had called Yasukage for another matter. Ro needed a set of throwing knives that he could handle himself, and the proper equipment. Yasukage thought about it for a bit. Basically, all of the gear is gotten by Daisy. But when it comes to controllable throwing knives, Yasukage will try to settle this matter. But Kazami Jr. also wants to ask Ro something. He's thinking about starting a guild. Things are going well in business, but with the help of the guild, you can attract less unwanted attention. It only takes 3 people to start a guild, and Yasukage asks Ro to be the 3rd. Ro doesn't want to draw attention to himself, and plans to stay in the shadows for as long as possible. Yasukage understands, and promises to do it without anyone noticing. Suddenly there's a scene on TV where all the 7 stars come together. Ro knows everyone by sight, but this is one girl he's seeing for the first time. The people in the cafe were surprised, for it had been a long time since the 7 stars had appeared at the same time. There were even rumors that the shining light had died. But for the 7 stars to gather, did something happen? Ro regarded the new guild member intently. That day, Fischl never told me who exactly would take Nana's place. But that person is truly pitiful, and the most innocent one. Fischl understands, and he's not trying to impose on Ro the righteousness of those actions. This is something that can't be changed by anyone. It's the fate of us, the 7 stars, said Fischl. The blonde had already started to tell what was about to happen, but stopped and said that the guy would find out everything when he was watching TV. If it frustrates you, then get stronger. Strong enough to stand on equal ground with the 7 stars, said Fischl, and be crushed by your own helplessness more than you are now. Fischl continued, but only thought about it and didn't say it out loud. Yasukage noticed how angry Ro was at these rumors about his sister. He tried to calm the boy down by saying that it was unfounded and baseless. Ro held back as best he could, but he accidentally crushed the glass. Ro decided to change the subject and asked how Jin was doing. Yasukage was surprised at the question, but he replied that he'd been a little busy lately and didn't know anything. Ro saw how worried he was and promised not to ask the question again. Finishing his coffee, Ro said he had urgent business. He would have to leave for a while and would contact Yasukage when he returned. Seeing him off with a glance, the guy is once again convinced of how crazy Ro is. He understands him too, though, because if people kept gossiping every day about his brother being dead, he'd probably be acting very intemperate and angry at everyone too. After a while in the dojo, Ro learns the basics of swordsmanship, while the other students try to figure out why their teacher brought this guy in. They didn't understand his training. If a guy wants to get stronger, why does he do only the basics of fencing for half a month straight? He does 20,000 swings every day. After that, he goes for a run in strength training. Why come to a place like this when you can do it anywhere? At this moment, the teacher approaches the guy. He noticed that the student's body started to look better than before. For 2 weeks now, his teacher has made him do only the basic exercises, whether it seemed to me like mistreatment to the guy or not. Ro obediently does the assigned drills, because it was his teacher who told him to spend more time on the basics. At first glance, the teacher thought that Ro said it as sarcasm. But Shihan asked, "What does the boy want to do from now on? To continue practicing the basics, or to start practicing swordsmanship in earnest?" Ro was surprised, because when they first met, his teacher had told him that he needed to practice basic exercises for at least a month. Shihan explained that at first glance, Ro seemed like a spoiled brat who wanted to practice fencing to look cool. Anyway, if the guy agrees, just say the word. Ro agrees right away. The boy looks forward to the teacher's admonition. Kamada Shihan looked at the boy carefully, and his eyes glowed green. Walking over to the wall of swords, the teacher said that in his opinion, the highest point of swordsmanship is this is only one thing. Shihan removes the sword from its holder and throws it toward Ro, throwing the towel off his shoulder. It was unbelievable speed. So the highest point of swordsmanship is speed. If you have unrivaled speed, you can fight even with a small set of techniques. The teacher asks Ro to show his fastest movement. Just looking at Shihan's physique, anyone would assume that he was a strong man. Ro thought the same thing. The sword flies at high speed at the teacher. That was a nice strike full of intent, but Shihan stops the sword with 2 fingers. The teacher asks what the student thought was wrong. Ro responded, about the lack of power. What creates speed is power. Unlike knives, swords aren't thrown weapons. And yet Shihan. The teacher liked the kid's answer. It was quite correct. From now on, the boy should realize what he needs to tighten up. The guy's characteristics were quite good. Still, he should devote some of his training to speed, not just sword exercises. Soft overcomes hard. Is that the kind of style you're going for? Shihan asked. Rather than speed, I'm aiming for stability, so I guess a balance type, replied Ro. Looking at the boy, Shihan drew a small conclusion. No impatience or arrogance. Boy's mindset is good. But something was wrong. There's something very suspicious about this guy. Hearing this, Ro thought, is this really the instinct of a swordsman? These days there are a lot of people using dirty tricks. I hope you'll keep your feet on the ground and move forward properly. I think highly of you, Shihan said. Ro thanked the teacher for those words. Don't just say thanks. Show it in action. Treat me to a meal next time. Well, I've got work to do, so I'll be off. The teacher continued. As an afterthought, the teacher remembered that recently, some spoiled rich kid was looking for Ro. Before Ro gets dragged into something nasty, he should hide out for a few days until they give up. After a while in the E-Rang dungeon, Ro was out hunting again. After touching the monster's body, Ro obtained some resources. There was meat in the resource list, and a note was assigned to it. This meat is very toxic, edible, but causes death if consumed. It was very strange, and Ro was a little confused, and in a few moments, the core of the dungeon was destroyed. Until now, the notes were only about rare materials and skills. I wonder why this time the meat was also with explanations. Monster corpses can't be taken out, but they can be used inside the dungeon. In the early days of dungeon descent, when humanity had no experience, skills, or equipment, dungeon raids were extremely difficult. Supply shortages were frequent, and some people even ate monster meat, that led to many explorers losing their lives. Monster meat is poisonous, and every explorer knows that, so why bother labeling it? Either they think Ro's an idiot or his skill level has improved. Back at home, Ro's phone is ringing with a call from Koji. The guy hadn't even had time to dry off after his shower, but came out to answer the phone. Koji wonders if the guy is free tomorrow. If Ro has the opportunity, Koji asks him for a favor. The guy agrees. He asks Koji not to worry about anything and to stay with his wife. Ro is ready to take his place in tomorrow's dungeon. Koji thanked the guy one more time and hung up. Maybe this outing will help with the investigation. The next day, Ro came to the appointed place. The chief of the gathering squad reminded about the rules of behavior in D-Rang's dungeon. Don't do anything unnecessary, just observe and learn from him. The guy looked at his watch. It was time. It's time to get to work. The group of gatherers entered the dungeon and were very much surprised. It was a very strange dungeon, which was a long and narrow passage, and the monsters were robotic creatures. This was a hybrid type of dungeon, a very difficult and dangerous place. It was a hybrid type of dungeon, very difficult and dangerous. From D rank upward, hybrid-style dungeons occasionally appear, and combining two or more dungeon types. Explorers dislike them because they break the internal consistency of the dungeon world. Only robot-type monsters looks like it's not fully merged yet. There was still a battle going on ahead, probably with the boss. The leader of the gathering squad asked all the squad members to check if there were any resources nearby. But apparently there was nothing useful here. One of the guys immediately looked around, and since there's one straight road and very little space, there's nothing here to take with them. Even the rockets were empty. The flying saucers were also empty inside. The squad leader noticed that Ro wasn't surprised. The guy explained that he had seen such information on the internet. Ro also realized that in the unfinished hybrid dungeons, the only resources were the resources from the boss. In that case, the group should finish up here as soon as possible and leave this strange place. The dust in the distance is no longer moving. Probably the boss has already been defeated. That's what really happened. The boss has been defeated, and the research team is trying to catch their breath. It was a really strong opponent, but it went well. It was about time to pack up and leave this dungeon. One of the combat squad spotted a group of gatherers. It's about time to gather resources and call it a day. It's time to destroy the core. Along with Ro, there were many people in the dungeon. If a guy started taking everything, someone would definitely see, leading to suspicion and unnecessary questions. But such bosses didn't appear very often. Suddenly, someone stabs one of the explorers with a sword. Everyone else looks on in horror at what's happening. One of the fighting squad of explorers with a nasty mustache betrayed everyone. The squad didn't understand what was going on, after all. Mida had saved the life of the Kaizuka who had attacked him last time. The guy considered it a decent payment since he didn't make him suffer for long. The spearman pounced on his opponent. This guy is not who he says he is. The villain dodged the attack with ease. With a sharp movement, he broke his opponent's spear and inflicted a wound incompatible with life. This guy doesn't deserve a name and asks to be called number 19. The leader of the combat squad had heard of someone named 19 from Abyss. The chief of the gatherers will attempt to distract and delay the villain, while the others destroy the core and flee the dungeon. It's the only way out. The guy also promised Koji that he'd take care of Ro. Ro inquired as to what the squad leader would be doing. I'm the leader. A leader protects his team, said the kid. Number 19 had already interrupted all the people, and only a group of gatherers remained. Armed with his only possible weapon, the squad leader ordered everyone to get ready and catch the right moment. Guy rushes in to attack, but his opponent doesn't feel threatened by him at all and just smiles. Number 19 is sick of such brave and stupid people. The villain also decides to go on the offensive and swings his sword. A sword a few inches from the brave lad's face. Suddenly, the red blade stops the opponent's sword. Ro didn't wait and decided to act. He can't let more people die. Guess there was some decent trash in the pile after all, said number 19. Holding his sword out in front of him, Ro asked the squad leader to take the others with him and hide somewhere. Number 19, in turn, doing a stretch, said that he didn't really mind a fair fight, since he was, after all, a good villain. Then Ro again clarified to the enemy whether he was from the Abyss, in response to which the 19th confirmed it once more. However, Ro immediately noticed that something was wrong. The Abyss is made up entirely of ruthless scum. Their main business is human trafficking, and killing is just a part-time job for them. 19 had no intention of giving the guy time to think, immediately attacked him. When Ro blocked the lunge, the villain advised him not to ignore it and finally start fighting in earnest. After all, just by standing still, such a nasty insect is unlikely to even touch it. The next second, a fierce battle broke out. Watching the fight, the rest of the squad couldn't understand why someone as strong as Ro was in the rear. As it is, they should just rely on the rookie and try to catch the moment to break the core. Meanwhile, the 19th did not cease his onslaught. He tried to finish the boy off with a stabbing blow, but he dodged it with a graceful backward body movement. In the same position, he swung his leg and kicked his opponent in the arm. With this maneuver, Ro was quickly able to get into a fighting stance and move into counterattack. As he ducked, 19 realized that this guy was better than he'd thought. Now he was enjoying this fight. In response, Ro said that since 19 knows he is a villain, he should also know one piece of wisdom. Villains who yap too much always die quickly. Such arrogance infuriated 19, and he rushed toward Ro and shouted at him to shut up. Insects like him should continue to crawl in the mud and keep quiet. While Ro was trying to restrain the enemy, the squad leader finally got close to the core of the dungeon. But before they could rejoice, the 19th suddenly lost interest in his opponent and rushed towards the supporters. The squad leader immediately yelled to the guy standing next to him, "Get the hell out of here." At first, it looked like 19 would try to kill the supports to prevent the core from being destroyed, but it actually turned out to be a ruse. Thinking he had succeeded in causing Ro to let his guard down, 19 allowed him to close in on him, and turning sharply, swung his sword. But Ro just ducked. Moreover, from this position, it was not difficult for him to dissect the enemy's chest. Before 19 could realize what had happened, Ro kicked him, knocking him back into the rock with tremendous force. After that, he ran up to the dungeon core and smashed it. Asking his comrades if they were okay, the guy suggested they hurry outside. He thought the fight was over, but when he saw the leader's frightened face, Ro realized he'd screwed up. And 19, who had suddenly appeared at his back, remarked with a haughty smile that the boy was too quick to call it a victory. Ro had no time to react, and the enemy pierced him through with his sword. But suddenly, instead of just giving up, he grabbed the blade with a firm hand. Gritting his teeth, Ro whispered to the 19th that he was the one who had let his guard down too much. After these words, he abruptly swung the sword in his other hand, and with a precise swing, he plunged the blade into his enemy's neck. However, when the guy looked into his opponent's eyes, his face filled with terror. "Too bad," eerily muttered the 19th. In the next instant, he disappeared, leaving behind only a purple flame trail. Before Ro knew it, the sound of flesh being pierced was suddenly heard again. Stabbing his sword into the squad leader's back, 19 was surprised that Ro didn't die after the first blow. Well, he doesn't really care that much about the order in which these insects die, though. Still not understanding how this dude managed to teleport, Ro speculated that perhaps he was a user of a special type ability. An explorer's abilities are divided into 8 basic types: physical, enhancing, magical, defensive, controlling, auxiliary, useful, and special. Each type has additional subcategories. The body enhancement skill Ro possesses falls under the category of enhancement. Of the 8 special type abilities, the most complex and mind-numbing is the Shadow Special ability, which allows for up to 3 clones. Each clone has about 70% of the original's power. Snapping his fingers, the 19th swept his fingers at the fact that he was well informed for an insect. Be that as it may, even if he only controlled 1 clone, Ro would not have a 10% chance of winning. In that case, it's showtime. Dumping all the assistants into a pile, 19 offered the guy a deal. He can leave here alive, but otherwise everyone here will die. Or he can stay in the dungeon, in which case the villain will let these poor souls go. We were given exactly 1 minute to think. If no answer was given at the end of the time, everyone would die. Unwilling to obey the bastard, Ro glanced at the open gate to the outside. But very soon the 19th changed his mind to look for a third way out of the situation. The clone behind him explained that he was watching him very closely, and would not allow him to pull any tricks again. Looking into the horror-filled faces of his squad mates, Ro had no idea what choice he should make. He still hadn't found out the truth about Nana's death. He can't afford to die here. What should he do? Meanwhile, there were only 30 seconds left to think. Looking up, the leader told the newcomer to leave them and get out of here soon. Such a prank infuriated the 19th man. Swinging his sword, he was about to silence the leader, but one of the squads covered him, thus putting himself in harm's way. The other supporters asked the villain to stop it. Looking at the bugs with disdain, 19 said that their voices annoyed him incredibly. He was about to teach them a lesson again, but Ro stopped him with a shout. 19 in turn said he did not intend to hear anything but an answer. "I'll stay, so set them free," spoke the boy confidently. Looking down at him, 19 again demanded an answer, not an empty hero speech. Then Ro asked the enemy if he was afraid. Did he lack confidence in his victory? 19 pointed his sword at him irritably and remarked that this kid was a real jerk. He'd been given a chance to survive, and he'd ignored it. He still had time to change his mind, though. "It's only about 10 meters from here to the exit," Ro said suddenly. He sees right through the 19th. If he seriously tried to kill the supporters, Ro wouldn't be able to save them anyway. Obviously, in that case, Ro would then try to leave the dungeon, and 19 wouldn't be able to stop him because the distance to the gate was too short. In other words, this so-called deal was meant to pit his squadmates against Ro. 19 was sure that the guy would choose to leave the dungeon alone. If so, he would just step aside and let the supporters fight for their lives with Ro. He had no intention of letting anyone out of this dungeon alive from the beginning. But fearing that he wouldn't have the strength to defeat Ro, he came up with this plan. Since he was exposed, 19 had no choice but to release the hostages. He's ready to teach this scum a lesson without the unnecessary antics. Walking towards the exit with his comrades, the squad leader turned to Ro one last time and asked him to come out alive by all means. When the hostages left the dungeon, 19 immediately pounced on the boy. Now Ro could concentrate fully on the battle. He'll have to fight 3 enemies at once, but still, clones are clones first and foremost. While they are only marginally inferior to the original in terms of strength, they move many times more predictably. Very quickly, Ro dealt with the first clone, but he didn't have time to react to the main enemy properly, although he managed to block the attack of the 19th. The enemy managed to take advantage of his awkward position and kicked him with his foot. The guy hit the rock at high speed. He quickly regained consciousness and dodged the enemy's next attack. Suddenly, a clone appeared right in front of his face. Doing a backflip, he successfully jumped back. But before he could regain his body balance, a second opponent came from behind, almost right up to him. Striking the one in front with his sword, Ro simultaneously kicked the threat approaching from behind. "Is this all?" 19 asked with a smile, blocking his attack. In the next second, the clone vaporized, causing Ro to lose his equilibrium. The original took this opportunity and ended their battle with a swing of his sword. He first slashed the boy's back, after which he sent him flying with a powerful leg kick. At a tremendous speed, Ro crashed into the rock once again, losing his sword. Unfortunately, this time the damage he received was critical. The boy tried to get to his feet to continue the fight. However, he soon collapsed exhaustedly with his face on the ground. Snapping his fingers, 19 remarked that it had been a long time since anyone had pissed him off like that. In retaliation, he decided to give this insolent man the punishment he deserved. Grabbing Ro by the scruff of his neck, the villain dragged him behind him before throwing him to the ground in front of the portal that opened. Today he wanted to be merciful, and so he decided to give the boy another chance. If he makes it to the exit, 19 will let him go. Although Ro realized that he was just being bullied in this way, he couldn't afford to give up. He owes it to his little sister to get out of here alive. Soon the 19th was stomping his last hope into nothingness. With a mocking sneer, he pinned the poor kid to the ground with his foot and shouted that it seemed to him that this kid was not afraid of death. Pressing him harder and harder with his foot, the villain broke out into even louder laughter. Ro lifted his head out of the last of his strength and began to reach for the exit with his hand. All he wanted now was to survive at all costs. It was a sight that gave the 19th man incredible pleasure, though it seemed ugly to him. "I beg your pardon, could you please move over?" Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice interrupted the villain's joy. The girl in the hoodie and short shorts once again asked the man not to block her way. With a perplexed look at her, 19 suggested that apparently he had missed one bug. But the girl only replied that she wasn't a bug and just wanted to go home. In that case, the villain promised to let her pass if she could kill him. "Is that all?" asked the girl in surprise. Realizing this dude wasn't kidding, she only sighed heavily. "You're a pervert, aren't you?" The words uttered by the little girl, as well as her formidable look, again caused the 19th to laugh furiously. And he laughed until he found that his head was for some reason too far removed from his body. With only one sweep of her hand, she cut off the head of an enemy that Ro couldn't defeat, even after putting all his strength into it. Sitting down next to the injured boy, the strange girl asked him, "Do I have to kill you too to get out?" Lifting up, Ro replied that he wasn't going to get in her way. The girl in turn only looked at him perplexed. After looking him over from head to toe, she asked why he wasn't moving in that case. Ro thanked her for her help and then decided to ask her name. Suddenly, the stranger glowed with happiness and introduced herself as Konatsu. Also, since he asked her name, now he would have to treat her to a meal. Since before, everyone who asked this girl her name did exactly that, Ro had no other choice. He had to promise to treat her to some meat once they got out of here. That evening, they headed to a nearby restaurant. As soon as Ro placed a new order, Konatsu would immediately eat everything that was put on the table. Finishing another portion, the girl looked defiantly at the boy. Ro called the waiter over and decided to order more steaks. And when the waiter apologized, explaining that they were out of steaks, the boy asked for 10 portions of any other meat. Soon the order was brought to the table, and the little beast once again pounced on its prey. At the same moment, Ro began coughing up blood. Looking at him perplexed, Konatsu wondered why he wasn't going to the hospital since he was dying. And she didn't even think about the fact that she herself was the cause of it. And actually right now, Konatsu reminds Ro a lot of his little sister. When he picked up Nana, she had the exact same eyes, and she too was begging for meat relentlessly. Holding out a napkin to the girl, Ro asked her to take her time and eat more slowly. "Did you behave yourself this time? You've been gone so long I thought you'd been tricked again," said the man who approached, gently stroking Konatsu's head. Then, after looking at the meat too, he remarked that even if she had been tricked, it wasn't a big deal since she had gotten so much delicious food. And when Ro perplexedly asked the man who he was, the man replied that his name was Okamoto Nozomu and he was part of Kyuka. Ro earlier about a private organization called Kyuka. Even though there were some rather strange rumors about it, the guy still offered the man to join their meal. And that turned out to be a mistake. As it turns out, Okamoto is as voracious as the girl he sat next to. At first, Konatsu wasn't too thrilled that her elder would be eating her meat, but Okamoto quickly reassured her, reminding her that this kind brother across the street would order more for them if need be. To deny them such a request, Ro simply could not. Thank goodness he has quite a bit of money. After a couple dozen minutes, the two of them had already emptied the restaurant's meat supply. With a sigh of relief, Okamoto remarked that he hadn't been this full in a long time. Looking at them, Ro got the feeling that Kyuka was just a group of people who liked to eat good food. Deciding to thank the kid, Okamoto asked what his name was. As soon as he said his name, the man looked at him strangely. As it turned out, Ro was quite famous among them, as he was Yuko Nana's brother. This surprised Ro greatly, and so he asked how they knew his sister. Okamoto explained that he had been on TV, so there was no one who hadn't heard of him. Then the man noticed that it was too late. Realizing that it was time for them to go home, Okamoto suggested that the boy go together, and when Ro replied that he had business to attend to, the man pointed out that while it was good to be cautious, overdoing it could turn him into a lone wolf. Of course, he had no right to pry, but Okamoto would be happy to have Ro drop by for a visit. Sometime later, an abandoned building somewhere on the outskirts of town. Stepping inside with Ro, Okamoto asked him to make himself at home here. As soon as the doors of the building opened, a wonderful aroma hung in the air. Smelling the smell of meat, the red-haired girl suddenly woke up. Okamoto immediately tossed the meat sack to her. The girl in turn jumped up from the sofa and deftly grabbed the bag. Noticing that she was alone here, Okamoto asked Yukini where the others were, to which the lady replied that some were at work, and some were still looking for Konatsu. Finally untying the bag, Yukine saw several servings of fresh fried chicken in front of her. She asked where they got the money for it. Then Okamoto told her that their kind older brother had bought it for them. Looking at him, Yukine asked the unfamiliar boy if they had ever met before. When Okamoto said that maybe they knew each other, the red-haired girl suddenly snapped out of her seat and stared intimately into the kid's face after reaching him in a split second. As Yukini squinted at the stranger's face, trying to figure out who he was, Okamoto reminded her that she was well acquainted with his younger sister. After all, Yuko Nana is the genius who took her place. Looking at the guy with interest, Yukini asked if it was true. Ro, irritated, asked if she knew him too. Then the girl explained that he was somewhat of a celebrity, so it was not surprising that everyone had heard of him. A celebrity? What exactly do they know him as? A freeloader? A slacker? Or maybe just trash? All of these assumptions made by Ro turned out to be far from the truth. As it turns out, he is known as Nana's berserk button. Nana has the kindest heart among the 7 stars. Even when she was publicly mocked, she never got angry. People said that she could be easily bullied because of this. But one day, someone mocked Ro, and he was killed right in the middle of a conversation. Nana didn't say a word at the time, but after that moment, the rumor of her brother being Nana's berserk button spread quickly. Anyway, Yukini now wants to understand how Okamoto managed to find this kid, and why he brought him here. Does he really want her to use her power to cure him? Waving his hands, Okamoto asked the girl to show more hospitality, especially since Ro had proven to be very cautious, and it was quite difficult to get him in here. This came as a surprise to Yukine. Nana had often said that her brother was a kind man, but not only was he distrustful, he looked different. Okamoto felt the same way when he first met him. He's careful, wary as if always looking for an opportunity to strike. Ro obviously didn't like the fact that these two were discussing him so nonchalantly. What kind of a man he was not for them to decide. However, Yukine clarified that they were just stating facts. Out of respect for Nana, she decided to give the kid some advice. He should think about why his sister was so strong. Hate alone would not get him anywhere. Thanking the girl for her advice, Ro abruptly turned around and headed for the exit. And when Yukine offered to help him with his wounds, he only refused and said he would take care of it himself. Left alone with Okamoto, Yukine wondered why he had contacted him in the first place. The man, on the other hand, explained that the guy looked depressed and he just wanted to cheer him up a bit. Picking up a bag of food from the floor, Yukine sat down on a chair and said that she wasn't dumb enough to believe it. Lately, prices have only been going up, making it harder and harder for them to feed themselves in Konatsu. Had he decided to take advantage of Nana's brother's kindness and wanted to be friends with him just for the money? Although it sounded quite plausible, Okamoto only brushed it off and said that it wasn't true at all. This guy, covered in wounds, fed Konatsu. At first, the man thought he was luring her with meat to use her abilities later, but he didn't. In fact, he was just giving her a treat. Like Nana said, her brother is very kind, so Okamoto sees nothing wrong with getting to know him better. Incidentally, looking back, Yukine was one of the candidates for the 7 stars, but her place was eventually taken by Nana. Of course, Yukine didn't hold a grudge against Nana. In fact, she adored her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so withdrawn after her death. This is also one of the reasons why Okamoto decided to take Ro with him. Not only to cure him, but also so that Yukine could meet Nana's family. Meanwhile, Ro himself was on his way home. While walking, he came across a candy counter. When they were still kids, She and her sister loved to admire the cakes displayed on this counter. On one such day, Nana promised to earn so much money in the future to give her brother the most luxurious life in the world. She wanted to be the strongest and make her brother the happiest guy in the world. All these memories reminded Ro of the words Yukini had said to him recently. "You're nothing like Nana described you." However, Ro has no other choice. He had to change to get a chance to find out the real reason for his sister's death. It's only been a few months since he became an explorer. He doesn't have a lot of experience, but he's already learned a lot. Schemes, conspiracies, treachery. Even amidst all this shit, he was able to find people who risked their lives to protect their comrades. Thinking about it, Ro sighed heavily. Memories of his sister came over him again. "You're overthinking it," Nana shouted unhappily, pointing a finger at him. She thinks he's too passive. Besides, it's obvious that he doesn't trust people. And Ro can't deny that. He doesn't know exactly why he behaves this way. Perhaps he has seen too much, which has caused him to stop trusting people without realizing it. But his sister has seen more. She knows what people are really like when things get ugly. Despite this, Nana tried to convince her brother that not all people are bad. There are all kinds of people in this world. Some of them continue to have courage no matter what. Nana herself wanted to change this world. And there are many other people besides her who want the same thing. She believes that humanity has the power to bring peace back to the world. So her big brother should also stay brave and believe in the potential of humanity. Slapping himself on the cheeks, Ro brought himself to his senses. He really hates the fact that this world is full of affairs. Because of this, he ends up being suspicious and distrustful of everyone. If this continues, he will become a disgusting person himself. Changing the world, huh? Ro hates this world if Nana isn't in it. He is certain that even in the face of despair, humanity seems to care only about intrigue and betrayal. Still, he wants his sister's wish to come true. So maybe he'll have to at least try to believe in humanity. The next day, Ro went for a walk with Yasukage. The place they found themselves in was like a brothel. You could see by the look on Yasukage's face that it seemed to be his first time in such a disadvantaged neighborhood. Turning around on him, Ro wondered if he was surprised. He probably felt like he was now in a world he knew nothing about. Yasukage apologized, but Ro asked him not to, explaining that he had done nothing wrong. At the same moment, a child crashed into Ro. The guy asked him to be careful and watch where he was going. The child in turn remarked how cool the brother was and wondered if he came from outside. After receiving an affirmative answer, the boy continued to question his big brother about everything. The delighted child, having gotten all his questions answered, asked Ro if there was any possibility that he too might someday go outside. His mom told him he could go out when he turned 15. Ro only patted him on the head and promised the boy that someday he would achieve it. When the child heard his mom calling him, he said goodbye to his big brother and ran away. Ro and Yasukage stood looking at the boy for a while. "It's not your fault," Ro muttered sadly. Soon the two reached the right place. When they found themselves near the gate, they discovered that the bars were locked. But as he looked at what was on the other side, Yasukage froze with horror. People in scraps of clothing stood among the ruins and stared at them. There was nothing but madness and pain in their gaze. Realizing that this was a true hell, Yasukage asked why these people were being kept here. "Isn't there anyone running this place?" Suddenly, Ro grabbed his shoulder. Pulling him away from the grate, the guy advised his partner not to get so close. Watching the mad old man unsuccessfully try to reach through the bars, it finally dawned on Yasukage that everyone in there had finally lost their minds. They stopped thinking rationally. The only thing they craved was food. Just then, Yasukage asked who was in charge of the place. "The Explorers Association? Or maybe the 7 Stars? Neither they nor anyone else is in a position to run this place." Reaching the nearest shop, Yasukage picked up a bottle of water and asked his partner why he had brought him here. Taking a seat next to him, Ro asked what he thought after all he had seen earlier. Before, Yasukage had never imagined that a place like this existed. He knew that everything was not peaceful in the world where Ro lived, but he really didn't know all the details, and he didn't even try to find out. He had a fight with his brother, ran away from home, and only then did he see the real world. I guess he's too naive. Nana used to live here, and so the association wouldn't let this place fall apart completely. Besides, until Nana joined the 7 Stars, things were much worse here. Ro agrees that Yasukage is naive, but it's not his fault. Ro wasn't going to comfort him. He just wanted to state a fact. He knows more about the truth than Yasukage, but even he never really cared much about it. This country is divided into 4 zones, and this one has lost its value. The rich man's zone where Yasukage and his kind reside, the commoner's zone where Ro himself now lives, and the slums where they are now. The latter zone, however, has no name. Everyone calls it the graveyard. Why those people are locked in the graveyard even Ro doesn't know for sure. So he advised Yasukage to ask his brother about it, if he was interested. Before leaving him to his own devices, Ro advised Yasuke to think about it all again when he got his answer. 3 days later, entering his younger brother's room, Kazami Shun turned on the light. That's when he saw Yasuke lying on the floor, covered in a blanket. Walking up to him, Shun asked if he had found a new way to rebel. Yasuke in turn remarked that it had taken him quite a while to get here. He had been waiting for him for 3 whole days. Kazami Sr. opened the closet, and in parallel asked his brother to tell him what he wanted from him. After telling him that he had recently visited a graveyard, Yasuke asked his brother why people were locked up there. It was a living hell, blood and corpses everywhere, and the living were like zombies. In response, Shun told the younger man that all these people were criminals. Ever since the dungeons appeared, the world has been in chaos. They took advantage of that chaos to make a profit. Perhaps Yasuke might find it too cruel. However, he had no idea how many people had died because of them. More than 3,000 victims lived in Meiku City alone, half of whom died. But then one might wonder why no one from the nearby slums is helping them. Is it because they are locked behind iron gates? Or maybe it's because everyone is busy with their own survival. The answer is simple. No one hates these criminals more than the slum dwellers themselves. 29 years ago, the graveyard was first used to isolate people. Few people agreed with this decision. Most people wished only death for these scum. In such turmoil, it was very difficult for the government to make the right choice. In the end, it was decided to lock up all criminals for life. Of course, the easiest way was to just kill them, and no one would object to that. After all, every single one of them was garbage. 30 years ago, dungeons first appeared, and the main threat besides monsters to humanity became the people themselves. They became desperate and started killing everyone they saw. Their basic philosophy: if we're going to die anyway, let's all die together. The rest of us had to fight for our lives, and it didn't matter at all whether this person was bloodthirsty or good-natured, adult or child. They just wanted to live. Our day's D-rank dungeon. This time, Ro found himself in a real dungeon. A real dungeon is one that is recreated on the history of this world. Leaving aside intelligent life forms, everything else remains the same. Now Ro could see with his own eyes how events had unfolded since the dungeons had appeared. Some people have turned into real beasts. Well, it's time to clean this place up. Dodging the humanoid monster's attack, Ro rushed forward. 3 more opponents stood in his way. However, with one lightning-fast lunge, he had no problem getting rid of the interference. Upon reaching the very end, the guy stopped abruptly. In front of him, he saw a long-haired boy standing with his back to him. Most likely the local boss. Also under the boss's feet, Ro saw the body of a murdered man. He immediately felt as if the man's face was familiar to him. Looking around, he noticed many corpses of other explorers. This dungeon seems to have a preservation function. All these bodies won't disappear until the core is destroyed. But why are there so many dead bodies here? Is the boss really that strong? As soon as he thought about it, the white-haired boy turned on him and slowly asked who he was. However, he did not wait for an answer and immediately rushed into battle. Swinging the fragment of his sword, the boss shouted that he would kill every one of them. Ro blocked an opponent's attack. After that, he tried to counterattack the enemy, but the boss had no problem dodging it by jumping behind his back. Hoping to finish off the intruder from the blind spot, the white-haired boy tried to strike again. Unfortunately for him, Ro dodged with a deft move, and then grabbed his leg, sealing the boss into the ground with tremendous force. Rising to his feet, the boss whispered that each of them should. After saying that, he immediately pounced on Ro with shouts. This time, however, all of his attacks were predictable, and the guy had no trouble blocking them, until he came to a mountain of corpses behind him. By some miracle, he still managed to dodge the enemy's blow. But what he definitely didn't expect was for the boss to create a second weapon. Ro tried to dodge the attack, but the blade still caught him a bit. Realizing that no one was going to fight him according to the rules, he also pulled his trump card out of his sleeve. Taking out a second sword, Ro hurled it at his opponent. Though the dungeon boss had no problem deflecting the blade flying at him, it gave Ro time to get behind him. From this position, he had no trouble cutting into the enemy's back. He finished by traditionally kicking his exhausted opponent. When he had time for a breather, Ro noticed something amiss. Looks like the poison got into his wound. This boss possesses a sword covered in poison. Now it's no wonder why so many explorers have died here. Since this poison was obviously lethal, Ro had no time to waste. Swinging around, he was ready to finish off his enemy, when he suddenly saw his little sister in front of him. The sword blade stopped abruptly at the girl's neck. Reaching out to him, Nana asked what he was going to do. Hadn't he come here to help her? Realizing that his ruse had worked, the boss smiled slyly. "I don't want to die," was the last thing Nana's copy had time to say before her head flew off her shoulders. These words, "Is that what you told everyone else before you killed them?" Ro muttered angrily, looking at the severed head beneath his feet. After the battle with the boss, the guy's condition was getting worse by the minute. From now on, he should carry antidotes with him. Ro touched the boss's corpse and received 3 items: An invitation, an unsent letter, and a tear of resentment. The guy decided to review what he had received later. Ro held his head and began to walk over to a body that seemed very familiar. As a result of the poisoning, the guy's body didn't listen and he tripped over a rock. Falling to the ground, he accidentally touched the body of an elf and received a mystical book. Ro was surprised. After all, he was able to take the skill book from the other humanoid. Was it really two bosses in one dungeon? If that's the case, why did they fight each other? Or is that a feature of real dungeons? Ro began to hallucinate. Time is very short. He tries to leave the place as quickly as possible. He's so sick he doesn't even notice the system window. This time it mentioned some very strange information. 4 days later, the Kazami residence. Yasukage chats with the doctor on the phone and asks him to come by at a convenient time. After the conversation, the guy enters the room where he sees his fellow businessman come to his senses. Yasukage is overjoyed. Finally, Ro has regained consciousness. Ro could barely speak, but he was surprised to meet Yasukage. But what surprised him even more was the fact that he was at Kazami Jr. A.'s house. The guy explained that he'd come to check on Ro. He found his door unlocked, and the guy lying passed out. Yasukage took Ro to his house and treated him, but when he was planning to take him back, he realized he had no idea where the keys to the apartment were, so he decided to keep him. Yasukage apologized for being so intrusive, and informed Ro that he had been unconscious for 4 days. Kazami Jr. wondered where Ro had contracted such a deadly poison. The doctor said that if Yasukage had come a couple hours later, the guy wouldn't be alive. But if Ro doesn't want to tell where he got that way, the guy won't ask about it again. Ro asked what stage of development the Yasukage Guild was at. The boy replied that all that was left was to come up with a name. And why is Yasukage helping Ro so much? Does Ro have something that Kazami Jr. needs? If you think about it, his brother has all the right qualities, much more than Ro. Yasukage was a little shocked at such words. The guy agrees with Ro's praise. But there are some nuances. He is often treated as a lowlife, Kazami Shun's younger brother, or the second son in the Kazami family. Yasukage doesn't want to live his life hiding behind someone else's back anymore. Before, he thought being a parasite was a beautiful thing, clinging to either his brother or his parents. But after meeting Ro, he envied him. The strength, the fact that Ro never gave up no matter what. From that day on, the guy thought to follow this man, and maybe he too could become strong. "Do you think I'm an idiot?" Yasukage asked. "Yeah, a pretty big one," replied Ro. "But that honesty is a good thing. It's also a talent, and maybe Yasukage doesn't have the strength yet, but he'll get there someday." The lad was very glad to hear such warm words from his comrade. After all this talk, Ro came up with a suitable name for the guild. Jirai was the name of the guild Yasukage had created. Ro also answered the question of where he had picked up the toxic poison. He said that he had gone to the dungeon alone, and it was there that he had received such a fatal wound. And no sooner had the lad asked Ro about his adventures in the rank of the last dungeon. Suddenly someone tries to call Yasukage. Kazami Jr. urgently needs to take that call, and Ro thanks the guy and says he has to leave too. If anything happens, Yasukage should call him anyway. They agreed to keep in touch, and in the meantime, Yasukage would pack him the necessary medical supplies for his journey. A short time later, in Ro's apartment, a guy is looking at pictures of his little sister and asks him to wait a little longer. Laying out all the loot from the last dungeon, Ro began to study them. Looks like item information pops up individually once you leave a dungeon. The first thing the guy did was open the undelivered letter. I won't describe this text. You can pause it and read it. And if you understand what it's about, explain it to others in the comments. An unsent letter. Was it written the day before going down into the dungeon? Could this be the reason why that dungeon boss Will to Live was so strong? The next item was the Tear of Resentment. When used, it will make all monsters in the dungeon hold a grudge against you. Presentment, such a simple thing. The side effects are huge, but when used properly, it is a very powerful remedy. Picking up the last item from the first boss, the guy was surprised by its description. Invitation. Forcibly attracts any selected targets to your location. Can only be used in a dungeon.